This week on the OneCast, we're joined by NPFL pro Seth Ellis.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Oh God, it's a toad, son. It's a toad, dude.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day.
What's going on, OneCast fans? Welcome back. Episode 70 of the OneCast. That's right, 70 weeks. You all have been listening to us run our traps about a bunch of stuff, mostly fishing, sometimes me ranting, but super excited for that. Going to kick this one off before we talk about sponsors real quick, because I've done a terrible job of doing this, and it's in my mind right now. If you have not signed up for our giveaway, we're doing, when this comes out, we will have done our second one, so you've got 4 months remaining to get on for a chance to win. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever you listen to, go on there, leave us a review, screenshot that, send it to our social media, DM us that, and we will get you entered. I don't remember what the next prize is, but it's something cool. We do a bunch of really cool stuff. So
Lawrence Hooks' box of jigs, rabbit baits, just off the top of my head.
So speaking of those jigs, OneCast Fishing, head to OneCastFishing.com. Use the code TheOneCast, all one word. Save some change off the snagless jigs, long neck hooks, weedless neds, all the soft plastics in stock, ready to go. Make sure you check them out, OneCastFishing.com. Code TheOneCast, all one word. And Sightmaster glasses. We've been talking about, if you follow us on social media, absolutely clutch in those low light situations. Trey and I fished a tournament this past weekend. It was pretty much cloudy all day. We did get a little bit of sun, which was a surprise because they weren't calling for it. But we were able to see fish. It was a sight fishing tournament. Fish were up. We were able to see them all day. Couldn't find the big ones. Ended up with another top 10 in a good tournament. But definitely the Hobie Sightmasters helped that. So HobieEyewear.com is the website for that. But if you use the link that is in our description, the link tree down below, or the direct Hobie link, you will save 15% off those glasses. Make sure you get yourself a pair of the floating frames. Again, we've told the story. We've tested them. They actually fell off a trade's head on accident. They floated. We recovered those, and you're not out, $100 or whatever. If you use our code, you won't pay that $100. But
that was on the day that Seth beat us on Lake Gaston, which is why you see us rocking his Seth Ellis fishing hat. So appreciate that, Seth. Also something else that keeps you protected, not only from the sun. Like we had cloudy days on Jordan, but still, like, you need to keep in mind to keep your skin protected, right? Like UV rays are harmful. We know a lot of anglers that come down with, skin cancer and things like that. And there's no better way to keep yourself protected with Carolina Waters, right? Seth's rocking Carolina Waters.
I've got one on.
Yep. Ben's got one on right now. Carolina Waters has you covered. You can go out at CarolinaWatersNC.com. Use the code TheOneCast. You're going to save a bunch of money at checkout. You're going to support a small local business here in the North Carolina area, serving the world. Honestly, they get orders all over the world. So they got great UPF gear. They got some new lines that are coming soon. So hopefully we'll be seeing those pumped out, but Carolina Waters, those guys have been a great partner for us. So
new lines, buffs. So they're out. They should be on the website. So if you're a buff person, they also ordered some UPF gloves. I'm leaking it. I don't care. I'll probably get kicked out, but it's fine. UPF gloves. So if you're a glove guy, I never was until I got down here in North Carolina, and I've met too many old guys. I use that term respectfully, but guys that have been doing this for a long time, they didn't have the protections we have now. As I met them at the ramps and stuff, every single one of them's got a story about skin cancer, getting it cut off, or they're having it for the 10th time. So I'm not a big sunscreen guy. I know it's not good, but I'm terrible about putting on my face and stuff, but I keep as much covered as I can. And it does make a difference. You don't realize how burnt your hands will get. And how much sun they'll take. And a lot of those stories from those old guys are hands, fingers, things like that. So those will be coming here in the next month or so to the site. So make sure you check them out.
Also, head on over if you guys are in the market right now for a great piece of property. If you're looking to get that sunshine or looking to get that shade out in the country, you can hit our buddy Eric Schwind up over at Mossy Oak Properties. He serves the Sand Hills region. He's your broker. He's the one you want to contact. You can shoot him a text or give him a call at 936-494-9686 or shoot him an email at ESCHWIND@mossyoakproperties.com. He'll get you guys hooked up for that paradise that you're looking for, either residential or just a plot of land if you're an avid outdoorsman or you just want your little piece of paradise.
Also, he's a veteran, so it's always good to help. Well, he's still in, so he will be a veteran one day, but he's still active now. So it's always good to support those that have done so much for us. So make sure you check Eric out. Before we talk to Seth, another friend of the show, somebody Trey and I had the opportunity to talk to. Hopefully, you all listen to our episode from Angler's Choice. Corey Johnston won down there on the St. Johns River. Didn't even need to fish the final day. Could have stayed in bed and still would have won.
I think it was the second largest margin of victory.
The only one bigger was Horton whenever he ordered the pizza.
The court order.
That was an awesome event. A lot of old school fishing. They only had a day and a half of practice, and being the St. John's anyway, it's a shallow water event, and see them punching lily pads and catching 7-pounders was a blast to go see some old school shallow water fishing down there in Florida.
I thought it was really cool that they fished. A lot of guys were in the Salt Springs area. I have some experience down in Salt Springs, mostly because I was just looking for manatees, but still, like, being able to sight fish in that extremely clear water in Salt Springs was a really cool thing to see from like the drone perspective. So huge shout out to Corey and all those guys that were whacking them off the beds. But it just shows you how good those guys are, like being able to go from clear water in Salt Springs to the river and flipping and punching pads and stuff like that. And, we got a pretty special guest here that's all old school. And I hate how we say like it's old.
He's not old school. He's a shallow water guy.
But that's old school these days.
Is it old school? I mean,
it's just been old school for a while because that offshore game picked up 10, 15 years ago. And
So old school is like beating the banks, right?
Pitching and flipping
and stuff. But like everyone's like, you're either old school fishing or you're scoping now. So like, I just don't want to, I don't want to take away from the guys that are still like fishing.
I mean? It was a great fishing event. And it was also great. That was Rick Clunn's 500th event. 500. I think they had a cameraman on the first 2 days. Fortunately, he didn't make the cut, but he had a decent tournament.
Yeah.
And so it was awesome to see him out there going fishing, just doing what he loves.
I am very confident that's a record that will probably never be broken.
Oh yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Unless Trey McKinney stays around for 50 years. And
that's true. He's only like 13, so he probably doesn't have a shot.
Yeah, it was cool to see Rick like go out there. I think he was on a pop cut and he was throwing a freaking crankbait around.
That and top water.
Yeah, top water and crankbait, just beating them off the laydowns and stuff, and just catching bass, dude, doing his thing. So it is cool, and he still has a lot of juice left in him. You know what I mean? So
yeah, he's had two good events. And well, I mean, he didn't make the cut, but he made the cut in the Harris chain. And
yeah, but it's all relative, man. Like the guy's 80 and still performing at the highest level.
Yeah,
and you're like, he doesn't make the cut. But if you look at it, there's 110 of the best dudes in the world.
Yeah, that's right.
And all of a sudden, you got a guy that, I mean, arguably probably has one of the best resumes in bass fishing history, is still doing it after all these years.
Yep. I think it's the only thing that probably keeps his heart beating.
Probably. 100%.
You know what I mean?
That and his kids.
Several years ago, I think it was maybe the 2016 St. John's. You can find this video on YouTube. He catches like an 8-pounder and he sits down and his hand is shaking. He's like, I won't quit until this stops happening. Getting that big bass fever.
Good
so
for him.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I see Trey shake like that when he hooks a big old mud fish in.
I did that twice. Once yesterday, and I actually was on the phone with Pete, and I was like, "Boom!"
He goes, "It's a giant, dude." It's a mud fish. I knew it wasn't a giant because he was on hair. So.
Hook sets are free. It doesn't matter. I'll go through multiple frogs for mudfish. I don't care. So,
but speaking of mudfish, fishing in the mud, we talked about fishing shallow, beating the bank. Seth Ellis is joining us. He's probably one of the best at that, especially in North Carolina, but he's shown it works all over because he's had a really strong start to his NPFL career. Seth, you want to introduce yourself to those that don't know you? I know you were a college football star quarterback, and then you went and played a couple years in the Arena League. Just kind of let everybody know who you are and how you got into tournament bass fishing.
Yeah, so Pete did a pretty good lead in there. My name's Seth Ellis. I'm originally from Cincinnati. I grew up there. I spent the better half of my life there. I'm getting ready to turn 40 this year, so I think I moved to North Carolina about 11 years ago. I've been down here since then. I started actually in the Lillington area, and then I moved to Charlotte for a couple of years, and then I've been in North Durham now for almost 7. But yeah, I went to college. I did all that deal. Was an athlete, and then like most guys that are athletes that got into professional bass fishing, at least, or in fishing in general, you want to keep that competitive fire going, right? So that was just something that drew me. Now, granted, I've been fishing since I was a kid. My grandfather actually was a guide on Lake Penasauken in Florida. So I used to remember going down there in the summers to Disney, and then we'd go see my grandfather. But that's how I got into this deal, and it just slowly progressed over the years. I had a little bit of success locally in Ohio, and then I kind of branched out and spent some time in Tennessee and Kentucky. And then when I moved, I was a little bit older, and I had finally saved a little bit of money up to where I could get some equipment that was kind of worth something, and I could kind of pursue this. And I've done it all. I fished the BFLs, I fished the ABAs, I fished team tournaments, club tournaments, and I kind of just kept going at it. And I finally gotten to now or a point in my life where I've tried to make this a career.
Yeah.
Yep.
So being from Cincinnati, like, first of all, what brought you down here? I mean,
my wife's going to kill me. She already knows the story.
She won't listen to this.
Actually, I moved down here for a woman. Believe it or not,
a woman that is not your wife, I'm assuming.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, no, my wife knows the story. I have an incredible wife. But yeah, I actually moved down here because of a girl. And it didn't work out, thankfully, because now I'm married to probably arguably the best woman in the world.
Yeah.
I have 5 beautiful children. And we've been going strong now for almost 7 years. So it's been good. But yeah, I moved down here because of a girl, and it lasted for a little bit, but I was very fortunate to meet some locals here that have kind of helped me get my foot in the door as far as just fishing here, because from Cincinnati, the Ohio River to down here is a big difference, boys. Yeah. I remember the first time I fished a Wednesday nighter on Harris. I think I'd caught like 15 pounds, maybe 17 pounds. And I thought, I got this thing locked up, boys. Yeah. There was 2 guys by the name of Jamie Fajardo and Josh Hooks that silently killed my ambition that night with, I think, like 5 that went 32 with a couple over 8.
I think we all have that type of experience here. The one for me, a few years ago, me and my buddy Sam flipping crickets, we went out to Jordan Tuesday nighter, and it was June, they had a 3 fish limit. We had a 15 and a half, almost 16 pounds, and we took 6 for 3 fish. We're
it's
like,
a humbling sport, man.
Are you kidding me? There were 2 like 18-pound bags for 3 fish.
Mine was the same. Tuesday nighter on Jordan, I had 14 pounds on 3 fish, and I was like, well, I'd at least get paid.
Yeah. No.
19 on 3 was won it, and then 16 and 18. Yeah.
And that's, I'm not trying to get off topic here, but that's what's so incredible about this area is that I had never heard of this place.
Nope.
Yeah.
And you hear about the Okeechobees and the Gunnersvilles and the Texases and the Clear Lakes and the Deltas and all these things. And this region right here, this 100-mile region, is probably on par for the best 5 fish limits all over the country.
I agree.
And you never know about it.
Yeah.
No, I mean, obviously MLF showed it off a little bit a few years ago. Twice, 2 years they've been here now. BPT's
and they're going to show off.
They're going to show off
100%.
Eastern North Carolina, which I'm a little bit sad about.
Some people aren't happy about that.
That's been a hidden gem. I mean, I'm glad because it's an incredible fishery over there. It's so different from anything else in North Carolina. A lot of folks are scared to go fish it because of the stories of how dangerous it is, which it is. But if you're smart about it, you're not going to tear yourself up. But yeah, I mean, I didn't know what we had here. I'd lived here for like 3.5 years before I realized what we had. I mean, I did a little bit of fishing, and then the BPT came the first time, and I saw Jordan Lake in 40-pound bags, and I was like, that's literally a mile for me. I'm going to go home and get the boat.
It's not even a mile.
I had no idea. Yeah, it's actually exactly 1 mile.
Whatever.
I did it in the truck, but yeah,
I mean, it's unbelievable because, coming from where I came from, and I grew up fishing against guys like Bill Lowen, who's is arguably probably one of the top shallow water fishermen in the world. Yeah. Right. He's been doing it for so long, and he used to kick my tail up at Big Bone on Thursday nights. I'd bring in like 6 pounds and he'd have 12, and that's a big bag there, like a giant bag. And he'd always have that. Right. So you look at it regionally, and I've fished in Kentucky, right? So Kentucky Lake, I fished. Now, granted, I fished Kentucky Lake on its downturn, but still Kentucky Lake, some of the places in Tennessee, like Dale Hollow and those places. And you come down here and it's like worlds apart. Yeah. The fish are different. They act different. And I think correct me if I'm wrong, but most of these fish are still northern strain, correct?
It's a huge mixture.
Yeah. So depends on the lake.
Right. But what I'm saying is you're not fishing for a true Florida strain largemouth.
No, they're all majority hybrid DNA in Jordan, but it's mixed hybrid.
But that's my point, right? You catch a fish that can go 18.5 inches long and weigh almost 5 pounds. Yeah. That's an incredible species.
Well, we talked about the river. There's a section of the river that I've caught multiple that were under 14 inches and were over 3 pounds.
That's crazy. Yeah. I mean, it's so cool to see and to get down here and and to see the types of lakes and the fisheries and to learn from these guys. Because look, I'll be honest with you, most everybody thinks I grew up here. They'll ask me, where are you from? What part of the state you from? And I'm like, I'm not from here. And they're like, how did you learn to fish these lakes so well, so quickly? And I said, I had to, or I'd go broke.
Yeah.
Because you cannot have a bad day against these dudes.
Mm-mm.
They've been doing it for so long and they know these places. I can tell you a handful of guys that I know, they say, oh, well, I saw Jordan before it was flooded.
Yep.
Or I saw Carr Lake when it was nothing. You can't compete against those guys unless you put your time in, right?
Yep.
So that's what I had to do.
Yep.
And long story short, it's got me to where I am now. But I mean, these places are incredible. The fisheries here are unbelievable.
So growing up in Cincinnati, you moved, or you would go down to Disney, and then you would go to your grandfather's to go fishing, right?
Yep.
So were you more excited about Disney or fishing?
Man, at that age, it was probably more about Disney because I didn't know what that was then.
Sure.
I was little. I can remember it. I was 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. And I remember long story short, I have the fish, the largest fish my grandfather ever caught. It was a 913. He caught it out of Panisovsky. Yeah. I've got that original mount. It's not a skin mount. It's actually the actual fish. I have it at my house. But, I remember that fish being over my grandfather's mantle and his little double wide. He lived on a canal. Mm-hmm. And he always used to tell me, he said, son, don't you ever go down there without an adult. I didn't know why.
Alligators.
Correct. 100% alligators. There was an alligator that his neighbors would feed. Oh. Right. So he'd have to run them off with a boat oar. So it didn't mess with us. But, you're down there and you see that stuff and you see all the water and you see boats everywhere, but you're 10,
Yeah.
And growing up, my dad he was an athlete. So my brothers were athletes. I come from a very large family. So that's what I knew. Like I love the outdoors and I love to fish, but I never at that level. Yeah. Right. My grandfather did it for 22 years. I think it was a guide at Panisovsky. Wow. So to see all that, I think, I just didn't know what I was looking at, to be honest with you, Trey.
Yep.
It's Disneyland and it's my grandpa's house, Yeah.
But his house was Disneyland for fishing. Like
100%.
Florida, and like people will say like smallmouth territories like Disneyland, smallmouth Disneyland and stuff. Got it. But Florida, man, like there's something about Florida. You can just catch a fish anywhere. It does not matter.
That's in your literal toilet. Definition of a ditch pickle.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. 100%.
There's something about those brown fish up north there.
But see, here's the funny thing about it, dude. I grew up in Cincinnati, right? 4 hours from Erie. I think I didn't go till I was like 24.
Really?
Yeah, because I loved coming south.
Yeah.
My heart's always been in the South.
Yeah.
My mom's from West Virginia. My dad's from Eastern Kentucky. And they always say, you're not from Ohio. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, I am. Yeah. But I loved being in the South. I loved being in Tennessee. My favorite sport was football growing up, and I always wanted to be a volunteer. Always wanted to play at the University of Tennessee. Now, granted, I'm a diehard Buckeyes fan. I'm from there.
That's painful.
Yeah, look, I get it. All right, I get it. But my point being is that would I have loved to play at Ohio State 100%? But there was something, the allure of the South.
Yeah,
the way people acted, the way they treated other people. I loved the South.
So you went to Minnesota?
Oh, I did, and that was the shortest. I think there's people who have nowadays that have stayed at a college longer with the transfer portal than I did up there.
Yeah.
I mean, I literally was there for 2.5 months. I got there in August and left in the first part of October because it snowed. And I said, nope, I'm not doing this.
You weren't used to it from Ohio?
Yeah. Yeah. It was, you got to figure I was 40. Well, I think you were a little over an hour and a half, 45 minutes to an hour, maybe give or take. I'm not sure about the time frame, but from International Falls, Canada, man, that's cold.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's a whole different level.
I don't
when they tell you got to plug your car in at night, don't go outside for longer than 15 minutes with exposed skin, that's an issue.
Yeah.
And those people up there love that stuff. Like, love it.
Yeah.
They're like, you want to go ice fishing? I'm like, not particularly.
Yeah.
But come on, man, it'll be the best experience of your life. I'm like, man, I just don't trust frozen water.
Yeah.
I'm like, dog, you can drive cars on it.
It melts.
Definitely. Exactly. Like, I'm not trusting that.
That's fair.
But here's the thing. Now, I wish at my age I would have done it because I'll probably never do it.
Yeah.
I'll probably never go back to Minnesota to ice fish.
Yeah.
And I had the perfect opportunity and I never took it, And I think those are things that people have to kind of look at in a big picture. It may not be something that you think about now, but 10, 15, 20 years, you're like, I should have done that.
I loved ice fishing.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, because you're from there too.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
up
fun.
that way. Yeah.
It's on my bucket list. I only want to go like once.
Yeah.
And then I'm
Well, it's so different now though, because they're like full on trailers with satellite TV and
100%.
furnace. Like we were out just on the ice on a bucket.
On a bucket.
No, I'm gonna be soft. I'm gonna be.
No, I don't blame you at all. Yeah, I would
Let
be
them cook you breakfast. Like enjoy yourself.
Yes.
When your bucket is so cold it freezes to your butt.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know it's a problem. So, but you you bounced all around and stuff, but you played collegiate level football. Right?
Correct.
in Ohio.
Yep.
In Ohio.
Yep. Well, actually, it was Northern Kentucky. So once I transferred to a small school called Thomas More College.
Mhm.
It's a D3 school. I think we talked about this before. So I played in a small conference that actually went up to where Pete's hometown's at. And I did that for 3 years, started there for 3 years. And then, I thought I was done, to be honest with you. I was starting to fish a whole lot more. And I thought I was done. I was like, I'm cool with it,
Yeah.
and then an opportunity came knocking. There was an arena team in Cincinnati. They had open tryouts. And my dad's like, why don't you just go, just see. And I'm like, Dad, I think by now, if I was going to go somewhere, somebody would have found me. And that honestly nowadays couldn't be further from the truth, because there's so many people that are professional level athletes that are looked upon over, or slipped through the cracks, and are now superstars, Hall of Famers. Right. So long story short, I did it and I made the team, and they asked me like, where did you come from? Ohio State. Like, we've never heard of you before. I'm like, man, I'm right down the road at little Thomas More. And they're like, how in the world? Because sitting here, I don't look like a big person, but I'm 6'5".
He's giant.
At that time, I was about 240 and I was yoked. I mean, I was in the best shape of my life. I was 22 years old. I make the team. I do that for a couple of years. I bounce around to a couple of teams. And by that point in time, I'm thinking, well, man, maybe I got a shot. Like I might be able to make the NPFL. No, that was never going to happen. I was just never good enough. And I can say that, right? I'm okay with saying that. At the time, it was devastating because I thought that was what I was going to do. I never would have guessed that I'd be sitting here today as a professional level angler. But, that's why God works the way he does.
That's
you
right.
know what I'm saying? So, I did that, and it was a great experience. I've got to play with some really phenomenal athletes. So you guys, we're all the same age. Remember Peter Warwick?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
So Peter Warwick was an All-American at Florida State, right?
Mhm.
Probably one of the fastest people.
I used to have his playing card from the Bengals. Yeah.
Right. So he played with Cincinnati for a little bit. Well, he was on the tail end of his NFL career at that point in time, and then was doing a rehab assignment. And I got to play with him, and that guy was incredible, like super fast. I got to play with a guy by the name of Michael Larkin, who was Ben Roethlisberger's #1 receiver at the University of Miami.
I knew the
Ohio.
name sounded familiar.
Yeah, he's actually a distant cousin to Barry Larkin, the Hall of Fame Red shortstop. I got to play with him, so it was an awesome experience. I wouldn't trade it for the world. But then now I sit here where I'm at, and I look back, and I'm thinking, look at these kids now that are 18, 19, 20 years old who are on the Elite Series that are so far ahead of me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now maybe not like skill wise, like maybe not casting or things like that, but like the way that they do things as far as electronics,
Yeah.
right? The way that they think outside the box. It's just crazy to think that if I would have never gone that route where I could be at, but once again, the Lord works the way he wants you to do. So,
That's interesting because we've talked about that before. About just because when we were all growing up, I mean, there was no high school bass fishing, and there wasn't college bass fishing when I was going through. And the sport, the young kids just take it to, and they get competitive so much earlier. And like with any sport, like you can look at basketball, football. When you start kids younger, and they just, by the time they get to that 18, 19, 20 year olds, they're just so much further along than previous generations.
but to that, and I speak from experience because I've seen a lot of this in buddies of mine that have actually had kids young, and they press them in a sport that they were really good at. They get burnt out on it.
Yeah.
Like if you actually listen to a lot of professional level athletes, they say they want their kids to play all sports. They want their kids to be well-rounded, and they allow their children to make the choice for themselves. And I think that's very commendable because I have a son now, and what I love my son to be a star football player. If my son never wants to pick a football up, that's his choice, and I'm going to love him just the same.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think you see that a lot. I mean, we're getting kind of off fishing, but this is a good conversation because there are people that push their kids in fishing or baseball or football, whatever it is. But if you look at athletic families, sport families, you see a lot of families that dad played in the NFL and now his son's in the MLB,
Right.
or dad was in the NBA and his son's in the NFL. Mom was a track star, but he plays ice hockey.
That's
like
right.
they, like you said, you got to give kids an opportunity to try different things, and to have fishing is one of those things kids can try now. It's something I wish that we had when we were a kid. Cause I mean, I played a ton of sports and, you know, I loved them, but I didn't have, other than on weekends when I didn't have a sport to do, you know, fishing to try to compete at. And it would have made a big difference, I think. In
nobody really knew that like fishing is categorized as a sport anyways.
Not when we were growing up.
Not when we were growing up, right? Like,
right,
we were probably in middle school, high school, when it really the early 90s.
Yeah. But I don't think we're off topic here, because, you know, the question I have for you is, you come from a team sport environment, right? Collegiate level football player, arena football player. Everything is all about the cohesion. It's about the team. It's about, you know, obviously there's a captain on the team. Somebody's calling the shots, but at the end of the day, you need all those moving pieces to work in order to move the ball down the field. Now you're in an individual sport.
Right.
So from your perspective on going from team sports to this now, like, what is the biggest transition point for you going into an environment like this? Is it lonely?
I want to add on to that real quick before you answer, because I think this is going to be unique perspective. Because you look at other folks that have do it, they were baseball players, shortstop, whatever. You were a quarterback,
right?
So you have had individual decision making built into you for quite a while, right? Like where you were doing the ball.
And I had to know where all 11 guys were supposed to be.
Okay, so that ties into this.
That's the deal. Like, so my job, the cool thing about being a quarterback is honestly, you don't have to be that good. As long as the guys around you are phenomenal, you get them the ball and let them work. And that's what I did, right? I wasn't this all-world athlete. Yeah, I could run, and I was a good-sized human being to play the sport of football, but I had phenomenal players around me, and I got them the ball and they worked. But the thing about it was it's like they always say, the point guard, right? Or the field general, whatever you wanted to call it. I had to make sure that guys were where they're supposed to be so they could be their best.
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier, but it's a lot harder, right? Because now I have to think, instead of thinking 2, 3, 4, 5 steps ahead like I would in football, I'm thinking, all right, so if I run this play and I see the safety drop, I can run this play, or I can call an audible. Or if I have this formation and somebody doesn't run with the man in motion, I can do this, right? So now it's similar, but it changes. So I run into a pocket and I'm like, all right, I'm going down the bank, throwing the top water. I look at the conditions based on what they are, time of the year, yada, yada, yada. And all of a sudden my mind says, okay, well, if I don't do this, what are my options?
Mm-hmm.
Well, on a football field, everything's in front of you.
Yeah.
On a 50,000 acre lake, you have endless amount of options.
Yeah. He's talking about Bugs Island, folks.
Well, that Bugs Island, Lake Hartwell, it doesn't matter, right? Yeah. So that's the big difference now. So you have to have a lot of self-confidence, because at the end of the day, it all falls on you. Yeah. You make the decisions you make details the outcome that you have, right? So for me, I think the hardest transition has been trying to limit the amount of possibilities that you have, right? Because, you know, guys, we have 8 hours to fish. You only have to catch 5.
Yeah.
So you don't want to get caught up saying, well, I need to go here, 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 and here, and here, and try to rule out all the possibilities. You try to get one clue with one bite, or one clue with a fish diving on some bait, or one clue with a fish blowing up behind you, and take that and run with it and see where it goes, right? Yeah. So I think that's the biggest difference.
You think you're good at calling audibles, though?
No, I'm very stubborn.
Are you?
Yeah, because I've had so much success doing what I do, right? That's the difference. A lot of these young kids are so good at saying, all right, I'm not going to do this anymore. Let's go out here in the middle of the lake and throw a jerk bait. Yeah. I can do that, right? I can do a lot of things, but I've just seen it so much that if you are very steadfast in your approach, that things are going to happen for you. Right. And there's been so many times where, like, I was telling this story the other day to a guy about bed fishing. There's been so many times at 1 o'clock, I've had one in the box, and all of a sudden I pull into a pocket and it's like 4-pounder, 6-pounder, 7-pounder, 3-pounder. And all of a sudden I've got 28 and it's 2:30, and I'm like, game over, boys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But then there's times it's kicked me in my rear end, man. Like, no doubt. Like, prime example, a couple of weeks ago, I fished a relatively larger event regionally here. The wind was gassing, like 25, Bugs Island, BFL. And I decided,
when it was 25 out of the north, too?
Stupid. Everybody smoked him on a blade.
Yeah.
Like there were co-anglers with 12 and 13 pounds on a blade behind their pros with 14 and 15.
Yeah.
I made the decision to run a long way to try to fish for some bedfish, and it bit me in the rear end.
Yeah.
Right. So those are the things that you got to live with. Those are decisions that you make.
But they're good for you, don't you think?
I do. You learn from it. But
Sure.
at the same time, like if you ask me would I do it over again, I'd say, yeah, because I know what I was on. I know the caliber of fish I saw in that place. That's the difference.
Yeah.
I don't think that day, the winner of the BFL catches any more than he catches wherever he goes on the lake doing the same thing.
Right.
I know where I was, that I had the possibility to catch a giant bag for that place.
Mhm.
But those are the risks that you run.
Yeah, I've similar like situation. You have a plan, you stick to it, it doesn't work out, but you know what it could be, and just you talking through that, you know, we Monday morning quarterback after action report. You think about it after the event, and it clicked to me sometime last year after an event. I was talking to my wife, and I told her what I did, what I thought I should have done after doing, and she was like, "Well, what did you find in practice?" And I told her, I know I could have had 25 pounds. Like with what I saw.
Right.
But you didn't. No. If you were in the exact same situation and found what you found, knowing you could possibly go catch a smaller bag doing this, would you still go do the same thing to try to catch at 25? And I said every single time.
Absolutely.
Because in a tournament,
that's all that matters.
I only want 5. If I can get 5 bites and it's 25 pounds, I'm happy with those 5 bites.
I'd hope
right?
So.
Like, yeah. But to your point, like you say, that like it just reiterates, like you have to have a plan. Trey and I have talked about it for us this year. Every event we've gone into, we've come up with a plan. We've stuck to the plan, and we've been consistent in the top 10, you know, through 3 events so far, you know, every single one right there. But we both said, like, we've had a plan, we stuck to it. And like you said, if you're steadfast in your approach, it pays off.
But look,
not all the time.
So,
right, but look at let me just say this real quick, Ben, but look at the guys that have been doing this the longest. And yes, I'm referring to Elite Series pros, and probably my hero, the one guy that I try to emulate more than anybody else. Greg Hackney. That guy does not go out there and throw a jerkbait with Patrick Walters.
No. I don't even know if he owns a jerk.
He does, but that guy does not go out there and try to throw minnow and jig head with Trey McKinney. He doesn't do that. Greg Hackney has made a career and a lot of money doing what he does best, and that's fishing 5 foot or less. Now, granted, can he go do those things?
Sure.
100%. But he'll be the first person to tell you that I don't beat Patrick Walters looking at forward-facing sonar.
Yeah.
I beat Patrick Walters in 3 foot or less with a 7-11 and 50-pound braid.
Yep.
And that's how you gotta do that.
He's a great example, you know, newer generation, John Cox.
100%.
Who I think might be
the second coming of Greg
the second
Hackney.
coming, if not a little bit. I think John Cox, in my opinion, in the years I've watched fishing, is probably the most naturally gifted angler I've ever seen. When you see the way that he fishes shallow, and I don't even think he has a forward facing on his boat.
He doesn't. He's got one.
He's put it on, but then he ends up taking it off.
No, he hasn't even put it on yet.
I know this year he didn't put it on. Last year he put it on and never took the cover off the graph.
I talked to him at Logan Martin, and he's got one, but he doesn't have it because his buddy, his travel partner before Keith Carthen, he's got one.
Yeah.
And he said, but I feel like Keith and I are just 2 different fishermen now.
You absolutely. Keith picked up and has adapted, and Keith had a terrible first BPT event, and he admittedly terrible. He went out to Toyota, figured out forward facing, had a good event at the next one, and said, I don't know if I will ever throw another cast at the bank again.
And see, that's the thing. But you know, I don't know, man.
I'm with you. So I have it. I'm not good with it.
Right. And I'm not either, but it's self-inflicted, right? I haven't spent the time doing it.
Me either. And I don't want to.
Yeah. And these guys, I think if you look at the guys that are really good with it, those dudes are all in, like 100% all in.
It's the same thing about going shallow.
Yes.
Like Cox or Hackney or you, like they're just committed to that game.
That's right.
And then it comes down to versatility. What I wanted to ask is, so like on the 1 day, maybe 2 day tournaments with limited practice, you get your plan to stick to it. But for these larger events where you have more practice time, and this goes into probably managing fish too, do you try to develop those contingencies based upon what the conditions may change? You're looking at weather, be like, okay, I may go here and do this, but it's not working. So I know this other things should work. And it doesn't have to be going in the middle of lake forward facing.
Yeah. So I do, but it's also based on the time of the year, right? So the springtime, I think, is the biggest question mark because fish are constantly moving in and out, up and down. Versus like the summer. Okay. So the summer, you can literally go on a Monday in, let's say, the middle of June.
They'll be there.
In 2 weeks from now, they'll still be there.
Yeah.
You go on a Monday in March, and those fish might be 30 miles from where you found them. Right. So exactly. Yeah. Right. So yes, I do have contingencies, and I had some when we went to Logan Martin for that bigger event. But at the same time, like they always say it's cliche as all get out, but a bass is a bass is a bass. Right. So depending on where you are regionally in the country, spring starts earlier. Right. So we were in Alabama, which is arguably one of the southernmost points in the States. So I've always heard that between February and March, the fish start to move shallow and want to spawn. And that's just from a long time ago. So I already knew I was going to start shallow. Now, granted, I got down there and conditions dictated that. High water, muddy water. Now, granted, everybody would have said before forward-facing sonar, well, those fish just go straight to the bank. Well, that's not true.
No.
But a majority of them do. And the majority of them that do, I'm going to fish for.
Yeah.
Right. But yes, I do have contingencies. I do say, okay, well, I've got some flipping fish here. I've got some moving bait fish here. I might have some staging fish here. And they all might be three different techniques, right? So the first technique might be chatterbait, spinnerbait, crankbait on shallow rock or wood, right? My second technique might be some flipping fish way back in a creek. And then my staging fish might be main lake points fish with a jig or a jerk bait. You always have to have that, man, because when you're fishing for the amount of money that we do and the amount of money that we have invested in this, you just can't go out there and say, all right, this is what I'm going to do and be like idiotic, hard-headed about it.
Yeah.
You have to be smart because it's a business. It's how I feed my family. And I've got 5 kids.
Yeah,
so if I'm not smart about it, I'm going to not last very long.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing too. Like a lot of these guys are adaptive. They will make the necessary changes. They'll pick up a spinning rod when they have to, if it means them eating or not, if it means their bills getting paid or not. They're not just going to flip 65-pound braid every day, all day, and expect to win or place in a third of the tournaments.
Yeah.
Who did we talk to a couple weeks ago? They never hardly fish a wacky rig, but as soon as they start fishing these trails all across the country, they always have one tied on just so they can cash a check.
Me?
No,
I mean, I don't, but yeah, we did it. It might have been Jesse. It actually was Jesse.
It was Jesse. Yeah.
Wacky rig and a shaky head until he started fishing more tournaments was something he was never going to pick up.
Yeah, see, that's like, you can do that around here.
Yeah.
You don't, there's guys I know that don't even own a spinning rod here that are hammers. But I can promise you, if they got outside of this state and they were fishing against 100 dudes and 15 of them from the elites and 15 of them are Hall of Famers and 15 of them are from the old Forest Wood Cup, you better learn how to do it because you will get beat.
You can tell us if we're crazy, but Trey and I and Ben has said it too. I feel like if you can catch fish in North Carolina, you can go anywhere in the country and catch fish.
See, that's so funny because we used to say that in Ohio. Like if you can,
I can go mash them in Ohio.
If you can catch 10 pounds in the Ohio River, you can catch them anywhere. I agree with you though, because this is not.
It's different than
there's a stark contrast from here in Lake Norman.
Yeah.
Oh,
100% stark contrast, right? So these lakes are nestled in this triad area. And I've had so many people say, man, how do you fish those places?
Yeah, I get burned all the time.
Yeah.
You see it all the time.
Yeah.
Like we saw it the other night. I won't name the person's name. And it was comical because, like we were on them and they clearly weren't, but they were like, man,
it was the day before the Jordan tournament.
Yeah, it was the day before the Jordan tournament. And they're like, I went out to Jordan and I caught 2 catfish all day. And we're like, how did you not catch?
They're literally
bass,
on banks,
right?
Beds.
Yeah.
They're everywhere.
But
shallow.
Even
deep.
so, it doesn't matter. Like you're right. The triangle area, Sharon Harris, the Falls, the Jordan, we'll just stick with those 3.
Kerr.
Right?
I mean,
Look, and because here's the thing.
In the summer, especially in the summertime.
Yeah. And Kerr's got, like, long story short, Kerr has blueback herring, but it does not fish like a blueback herring.
No.
Not at all. So it's you can rope that in with those lakes because it just doesn't fish like everything else.
But you can go out there. I mean, I've zeroed on a fun fishing day, right? And scratching my head saying, what is going on? But these lakes around here, like Pete was getting at, like they're a humbling experience. And so if you can figure them out here, do you feel like that you can figure them out anywhere else?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I have that confidence in myself. I have that confidence in myself that I can go anywhere and do that. Because if you don't, you won't survive out there.
Right.
Because those dudes put the boat in the water knowing they're going to jack them.
Yeah.
Like Patrick Walters, Drew Cook, Kyle Welcher, those dudes know when they put the boat in the water, they coming home with a check.
Yeah.
Like, and if you don't fish at that same level and have that same mentality, you're not going to last long, man. It's just like anything else, like in the military. Like if you look around, like, man, these guys can shoot better than me and they're faster than me and they're smarter than me, you're not going to last very long.
You're out.
It's no different in whatever job. If you don't have the confidence that you belong there, you don't belong there.
That's right.
You know,
imposter syndrome kills.
Yeah. I mean, you just got to do what you do best. And everybody's journey is different. Everybody's way they do things is different.
Yeah.
So for me, like, it's a very humbling sport. I have zeroed on my home pond more than once. You know, I go out there the day before. I do a little guiding, so I'll go out there the day before, and there's been times where I have struggled to put people on fish.
Yeah.
And you're like, what in the world has happened?
It's on a lake that rhymes with falls. Yeah. Well, I mean, seriously, like,
100%.
But you guide, right? And so obviously plug that handle later, or whenever you want to. But talk about that for a minute, right? So you moved down here, so you said you started finding people that would help you out.
Correct. There's some local names here that, I mean, they're old school guys. Dennis Reedy, legend.
Yeah.
He's just one of the many that have helped me. Jerry Marshburn.
Yep.
Legend on Sheriff Harris, right? Him, Alan Parker.
Yeah.
These are guys that are old school dudes. And I mean, by old school is they drag nothing but a Carolina rig, a wacky worm, and a shaky head. But these cats can still catch them. You know what I mean? And they helped me out. Like, they didn't say, "Oh, you're this damn Yankee from Ohio."
Yeah.
They knew that I loved to fish and they wanted to help.
That's what they say to me. I'm a Yankee from Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Yeah.
But Jesse had the same, he was here, but he didn't really grow up bass fishing in that essence. And then he got, Hal Abshire and a few other of the local guys that have kind of saw that he had it, took him under his wing, and they teach you, because like you said, those guys saw them fill Jordan Lake in.
100%.
Like, they know where there's stuff that we're never going to find with our guys.
Yeah, we got the original map.
Yeah, that's the original Sharon Harris map. When they filled it in.
Map of Sharon Harris right there from Hal.
That is no good. And to us, and those guys can look at it and tell you where they killed a coon in a tree they cut down. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You and I, does us no good.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the thing about it. Like, I don't know if Jerry and those guys saw me making it as this is a career, but they knew I loved to fish and they were cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, they're like, "Hey man, come on, we'll take you." I remember the first time I fished out there with Jerry in his boat. Like, I had never fished over 25 foot of water. Never. All right. So to do that, it was eye-opening to me. And it's the things like that you learn over the years. And then you see Dennis Reedy throwing a spinnerbait. It's just to watch that guy put a 3/4 ounce spinnerbait in places is jaw-dropping.
Really?
Yeah. And the guy can still do it to this day.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about, these guys have won a lot of money. Zuba, Robbie Walser, David Wright, Jeff Coble. These are all guys that I have fished against coming up locally here that have all had given me encouraging words that are, I mean, I think David Wright's won like 30 BFLs. He's an all-time winner in the BFLs.
Yeah, I think it's
30. And he's won, I mean, it's crazy what these guys have done locally. So for them to be encouraging towards me, say, "Hey man, good job," that means a lot. Like,
but what gave you the itch when you got down here to like jump in like this hornet's nest of local hammers? And that's everywhere you go.
I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
I didn't know who these guys were.
Yeah.
I didn't know who Jeff Coble was, David Wright, Billy Bledsoe. I didn't know who these cats were, let alone the Josh Hookses and Jamie Fajardos. I didn't know these guys. I knew that there was a bunch of water around me and I loved to fish. Right. And I just went from there. Now, granted, I love the tournament fish, but you don't know the local hammers until they take your money. For like 6 months in a row. And then like a year and a half. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, I got to reevaluate this process because I've spent like $8,000 in the last year and a half on local events and I have not cashed a check yet.
Yeah.
So you do. And look, the cool thing about fishing is that you get to see people progress, right? You get to see people who show up and they do absolutely nothing. But then you get to see the same guy year and a half, 2-3 years later, who has put his time in, stand right next to the winner or is in the winner's circle.
Yeah.
That's the cool part about it. Right. And that to me is just all I did. I just put my time in. I fished Jordan, Harris, Falls, and Bugs religiously. I was very fortunate at the time. I worked for myself. And then I later went and got a job with a local company, but I was very fortunate to be able to just fish when I wanted to. I worked a lot, but I could fish. If I wanted to go on a Tuesday and it was raining, I was going fishing, right? That's what I was doing. And then it'd be turned into a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then I'd fish a tournament on Saturday. And I might have to work Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, but then I was fishing Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday again.
Yeah.
And the more time I spent and the more times I got my butt kicked, I started to learn like, okay, I can't stay on the bank all year long. All right. I got to learn how to read my electronics because in Ohio, you don't even have graphs. It's like John Cox, right? You fish the Ohio River and you stay in 4 foot or less.
Yep.
So those are the things that you just learn over the years. And, get my butt kicked for the first couple of years I was down here by those guys. Then you start to look at it like, okay, what do you got to do?
Yeah.
And you just do it. Like it's so hard to explain because there's not a formula for it.
Right.
Right. There's not a formula.
Nope.
You just, because here's an also thing too. Like there were some times during those first 2 years that a fish here comes off, a fish there comes off, maybe not doing the right thing. Maybe they were just lucky random bites, but I don't finish in the bottom half of the field. Maybe I cash a check, or maybe I even scare the winner a little bit. And those are things that all come into it, right? Everybody gets lucky breaks in this sport, but those are things also that come into play. But week in and week out, I got my tail kicked in.
Yeah.
Because you can ask the guys around me. And I was very fortunate, right? So my wife now, her father loved to fish. He used to paint baits for a lot of guys that were on the Bassmaster Top 150s and then the Elite Series early on. So that's how I met my father-in-law. I actually met him before I met my wife through a mutual friend of ours, but he has an immense amount of knowledge locally. He used to win boats up on bugs a lot. So like I was very fortunate the last 5-6 years to be a team partner with him. I know a lot about these places now.
Yeah.
And if you look, like a lot of the guys that are really dominant around here, there's either a really good young angler or you have 2 guys that are mid to late 50s that have so much knowledge about
like
these places.
30 years of knowledge.
Yeah, you can't compete with it, man. No. I don't care. There's not an amount of technology in my mind that you can compete with the amount of knowledge these guys have.
Yep.
Because there's stumps and 1.5 feet of water that you'll never see with forward-facing sonar.
Yep.
These guys can go and know there's a 4-pounder on it.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Or they're guys that are in their upper 30s and everything's a cluster and somehow they do all right.
Yeah. So to each their own, right?
Yeah. So we were just talking about like regional guys, like spending 30 years and stuff on the water. They know where like a single stump is at, where a 4.5 pounder's laying. So you have crushed it regionally. I mean, obviously you got your teeth kicked in when you first got into it, but you're doing great regionally. Like you fish with us in the Fishers of Men, which is a great team tournament trail. And it is national too. So if anyone's looking to get into a national level event, like look at the Fishers of Men. But anyways, now that you're with the National Professional Fishing League, a lot of times on these weekends and these regional events, you're fishing for one day, you're fishing to win. Right. So you're going to run your biggest fish pattern you probably can. With the NPFL in 3 days of competing, all 3 days, no cut lines, anything like that, has that changed your strategy from regional level going after and blasting their face for one day versus 3 days and knowing that points matter to make the championship and knowing that, you got to stay consistent? Has that changed your strategy at all?
Yes and no. I mean, I have to catch them, man. I'm not fortunate enough to have a lot of money. So if I don't cash a check, I'm in trouble. Yeah. I have great sponsors. I'm just saying that I don't come from a situation where if I'm like, I finished 70th, that's okay. Like I can't do that. I only fish locally to win because you guys know this. There's no money locally unless you win. Right.
Yeah.
Now there are some contingency programs out there that make it worthwhile, like Toyota.
Yep.
I drive a Tundra, Pete, you drive a Tundra. So with the Fishers of Men, which is a cool thing, you don't have to win those events. You can be the highest finisher as long as you're in the top half of the field. $250.
Yep.
Right. So and people are like, oh, it's just $250. Well,
that's $250.
That's right. It's $250. And where I come from, that's still a good chunk of change. Right.
Right.
So for me, I always fish to win. Now when you go away and you're fishing against 125 guys, yeah, you might be fishing to win, but a lot goes into it. You have 6 days of 6 changing variable days, hour to hour, minute to minute, night to night, day to day, whatever it may be, right? You're never going to have 6 days stay the same. So yeah, you might be on the winning back one day. And then what are you going to do the next? When the wind switches out of the east and those fish go from 2 foot to 20 foot and suspend because a cold front's come in, right? So you have to make those adjustments and fish different areas of the lake. But as far as like completely changing the way I do things, no. I'm still going out there to win. Whether I do or not, I have to. Because if I go out there and say, well, man, I'm just going to go ahead and try to catch 11 pounds and cash a check, it never works in your favor.
Mm.
It never works in your favor. Like if you go out there to try to do the minimum, you're always going to get the worst possible outcome.
Yeah.
Versus if you go out there and set your goals very high to try to do the best you can possibly do, you're okay with a better than average day or just a somewhat better than mediocre day. Because at that point in time, you're in striking distance, right? Because that's the cool thing about the NPFL. There are no cuts. You can come from 75th to 1st if you have 2 really solid days, right?
Right.
Like I did on the final day of the first event. The first day I had 9 pounds. My fish just didn't bite. The second day I had a little bit better and I didn't lose anything, but I just never got the bites I needed. I think I had 11 or something. So I gained some places. I went from 34th to 11th on the final day because I busted 17 and a half and probably could have busted a better bag. But at that point in time, I knew I had done what I could have done the first 2 days and I was going to move up the leaderboard. So I didn't want to do anything to hurt where I was going to end up.
Right.
So I started to head back a little early. But yeah, I mean, you do change some things going to that level because you have to.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
we were talking about it before the show. You know, you talked about class of fish changing.
Yeah.
You know, you got a lot of guys out there that, you know, they'll tell themselves, I've done it. I think we're probably all guilty of it, right? Like a major touring event goes to your home body of water close to where you live, and you're like, man, if I was out there, I could have whacked them that day, right? Or I could have won that tournament, right? But maybe is right because you go out there on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then let's flip the script. You go out there on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Talk about that theory from your perspective on the class of fish changing, because we get a lot of that, right? A lot of guys on social media.
And I'll add to that, especially like here at Jordan, at least for me, like there's been tons of times you go going during the week. We all know weekend fish are different, but the afternoon fish is different. Like from
Then
3
the morning
to
fish.
the
Yeah.
3 p.m. to like 9 p.m. Like the Tuesday nighter tournament fish are different than those Saturday, 8-hour tournament fish.
I 100% agree. I believe that there are several different species, or not species, but classes of fish. And what I mean by that is I think there are fish that are very active or catchable fish from the daylight hour till like 10 o'clock. And then I think those fish completely leave. They shut off. They go somewhere. And then there's another class of fish that'll bite from like 11 to 2.
Right.
And then you have another class of fish that'll bite from daylight till, through the middle of the night. I strongly believe that. But there again, the class of fish thing, everybody's done it, right? We've all gone out there on a Tuesday and had the best day of our life. We've caught 60, 70 fish.
Mhm.
We might have had two or three PBs or whatever it may be. And then all of a sudden here comes Saturday around and those fish are nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
More times than I want to think about.
Although I'm just as guilty, Ben. I'm not going to lie to you, right? So I think a lot of it has to do with pressure, right?
Mhm.
Pre-COVID, man, I think the lakes were unmolested, for for lack of a better word, right? So you could still go on a Tuesday and the boat ramp would be pretty much empty, or one boat. And even on a Wednesday, you'd see a few boats on Thursday, and then of course Fridays, guys would take off work to pre-fish for the tournaments. Now, and it's Monday, Tuesday, Friday, Sunday. It doesn't matter. There's 60 boats in the parking lot, or multiple parking lots on the same lake. I think that has a lot to do with it. But I just think that, there are certain fish that live their days actively on days that aren't Friday, Saturday, or Sunday.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just me being honest. I do, because
off.
100%. I think they go to those places knowing that there's a very little boat traffic, and I think they can feel it.
Yeah.
I think they can feel it in the less pinging of transducers. I think they can feel it in the less, reverberations or vibrations from outboard motors, people beating and banging in boats. I think those fish can feel that personally. Now, I could be completely wrong. But I guarantee you, if you had a biologist, they'd probably tell you the same thing, because there's been numerous studies over the years of fish reacting differently to different sounds, right? So I remember one that they did on Kentucky Lake when I was probably in my mid-20s. They dropped a diver. This was before the Asian carp got in there. It was really good. They dropped a diver on a shell bed, and there were no fish around. And this was on a main river ledge. There was no fish around. A diver sat on the bottom for 30 minutes, taking 2 rocks, banging them together. And within 15 minutes, they counted over 100 largemouth coming to that, because it was a sound they'd never heard before. But now you put over 1,000 transducers. Each boat's got 2. You know, you got 200-300 boats on a lake, a big lake like Kentucky Lake on a weekend. You got people beating and banging and dropping. Well, this fish are going to do nothing but run because they've heard that sound before.
Yeah.
Now they can say, yeah, a fish has got the size of a brain, the size of a pea. All right. Well, have you ever tried to catch one when you really need to? It's not that easy.
Those green fish are
How
so
about
frustrating sometimes.
number 5? Like
That's
number
my
5.
point, right?
Yeah.
They're not as stupid as we think they are. Now, granted, they're not the smartest creatures on earth because they bite things that look nothing like the things that they eat.
Yeah.
But they're still not as stupid as we make them out to be, right?
Sure.
And I'm not a biologist, man. I'm not even close to a biologist. I've just taken all my experiences and things that I've seen over the years, and some other guys have lived a whole lot longer than me, and I've talked to them about it, and they've all said the same thing. Is that the fish through the week just don't see the amount of pressure that they do on the weekends. And it doesn't necessarily have to be just fishing pressure. It can be boating pressure.
Yeah.
You know, just think about it. Like especially Jordan Lake in June or falls on Memorial Day. Like the amount of boats that are out there.
That was like a knife right in my heart.
Well, I'm sorry. It's just the facts.
Oh, I know.
He'll
I know.
be there too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'll
He's going to give him the pressure too.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, so we've had biologists on. We've talked about this, and we fishermen tend to see these trends long before any studies show it, right? Like we years ago started to say something was wrong with hares. It took till this past year for them to see what anglers have been saying for 4 or 5 years now. It's the same with forward facing. Like we were talking about it when we took our break there, and I'll put some juice out there. Like there are lakes that are forward facing lakes, and there's lakes that aren't.
100%.
Jordan is not a forward facing lake in the sense of jig head minnow. Like there's ways to utilize it.
Yeah.
But you're not going to go out there with a jig head minnow on Jordan. Like I promise you.
You're not going to go between the mouth of Beaver and the mouth and 64 Bridge and ping them out in the middle. It's
Exactly.
not going to happen.
You might on some other lakes.
Correct.
Harris, 100% you can catch those schools.
Sure.
You could catch those schools with forward facing. But Trey and I, especially last year, started to notice when we would run over a school, you would have them marked, you would pull back off, we would come set up. Forward facing, you might catch 1 or 2 out of that school, and then they would shut off. If we shut the forward facing sonar off and quit paying with it, you might catch 15 or 20 out of that school.
Yeah. See it.
And the only difference was turning that transducer on or off. And to me, and there's times we've seen it, you'd pull up on a school, they'd be there. They didn't care about the boat driving over the top.
Right.
But as soon as we put that forward facing on them, they felt that ping, you'd watch them suck to the bottom.
And see, you know, you guys talking about that, I have seen reports. I'm like this. I just can't believe it. But I agree
I have
with you.
seen it with my own 2 eyes.
Because back in the heyday when side scan, like even now, you can, especially like July when those fish have been rode over 477 times.
Yep.
Off the bottom they go and suspend. Like I get it. It makes sense, but it's so early. Now I do know that the forward facing ping is stronger than like a regular.
It's more rapid too.
Correct. So, and maybe it's just having,
it's more about the speed than
right.
the
And
power.
maybe it's having a harsher effect sooner regular than a regular, 2D or a side scan transducer. But it's crazy to think that already.
Well, they're even saying they're seeing it some on like the Gunnersville and some of those ledge fishing lakes where, the pressure is part of it because more guys can do it now. But they're talking about rolling up in a suit before they even make a cast. That forward-facing sonar ping hits them, and those fish all just scatter.
There's a study I think I want to compare this to. It's been several years ago, but ultimately these fish, they're going to learn because they don't want to be caught. They don't want to die. They don't, and so they did a study where they put a bunch of fish in a pond, and they would go out there and fish them for a couple months, and they caught a lot of fish. They caught all the fish at the same time. Then they drained and they tagged them all. Then they drained the pond, and a bunch of fish were never caught. So they put them in a different pond. They put the caught fish in the other pond, and they did this a couple times. And what they learned is that some fish they just never learn. Some fish are just naturally aren't going to bite. Other fish they learn to avoid different lures.
And see, that goes back to the class of fish thing, right?
Mhm.
There are a group of fish that may never bite your lure, even with forward-facing sonar.
Yep.
You can see where guys will chase a fish down, right? Which is a whole nother.
Yeah, we're not going to get into it.
But they chase a fish down, and they, after a while, 15, 20, 30 minutes, they still can't get it to bite. And they might say, oh, well, it's not a bass. Well, they don't know that for one. And for two, that might be that class of fish that says, wait a minute, something's not right. I'm not putting myself in harm's way. And they're gone, So who knows?
So you took this regional experience to the NPFL. What are some of the What are some of the things that North Carolina and through your mentors and stuff have taught you that have helped you trick some of those fish, in your opinion, to bite? You don't have to let your juice out there. You know what I'm saying? Specific baits, but like, but you know, like you hear a lot of guys say, oh, you know, I do this certain thing with a Carolina rig or this, whatever. But have you learned anything here that has really helped you trick fish, maybe that different class of fish, into biting when they most likely wouldn't for someone else?
So, I mean, obviously I've only been there with one event, right? So we're going to go to Hartwell in 3 weeks, which will present a different type of,
trickery.
Yeah. I mean, the possibilities there are going to be endless, to be honest with you. But in my first event, one thing that I've learned, more specifically, basically on Kerr Lake Bugs Island, is that the earlier in the year, how shallow I fish, how shallow you can catch fish in cold water. Like, I mean, 44, 45, 46 degrees. And I mean, burning a bait, 6, 8 to 1, 7, 5 to 1, whether it be on a chatterbait or a square bill or a trap, and they'll stop it. Most people, like, it's kind of funny. We went down there. I had my good event, and Drew Cook busted a big bag the final day. I think he bust 20. Right. And Drew Cook's a heck of a fisherman. You know, he's won on the Elite Series. He said, I never would have guessed these fish were that shallow. Never. I'm like, dude, you wouldn't believe it. Like, I can go back home and it's 46 and you can blast 20 on bugs with a trap or a square bill or something, and they'll stop it. Those fish were no different. Like, I was catching those fish on the backs, the very back post of boat docks, maybe 1.5 feet on a chatterbait. And I would throw it in there and I just real quick, and I kind of let it flutter down, and they'd smoke it in 1.5 feet of water. And I think that's one thing that I learned here, because like in Ohio, much like Michigan and Pennsylvania, your fishing seasons are a lot shorter.
Yeah.
I can't fish in January in Ohio. You can't do it. I mean, you can, but you're not going to catch anything because it's hard water. But down here, like fishing in January and February, and just learning how shallow fish got, that's one thing that I've taken. You know, and another thing too is like not being afraid to, like, everybody's read the magazines, right? And they're like, oh, you got to do this in March, or you got to do this in February. No, doing the exact opposite. And I think forward-facing sonar has done that and shown us that you can do those things and be successful.
That's right.
Right. It's 46 degrees, and you don't have to get it out there on a main river bar or a point and drag a jig. You can get up the back of a creek in 46-degree water that's got some stain to it, and throw a big gaudy-looking spinnerbait or chatterbait and blast them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Where everybody else is out there going, you know, doing that jazz. So that's just a few things, you know, that I've done so far. But like I said, Hartwell's going to present a whole nother set of challenges, because that place is just as big as, let's say, a Kerr Lake, but it's also got predominant 2 species, not a predominant largemouth lake. It's predominantly spots with largemouth in it.
Yeah.
So there's so many different ways that you can attack that. And some ways, but here's again, man, I'll still fish shallow in May. Like, there's going to be guys that are fishing the herring spawn, and guys that are trying to do this, that, and the other out there in 25 on cane piles. There'll still be fish up there in 2 foot. They just might be using boat docks, or they might be using the root balls on laydowns. It's just something I'm going to have to figure out when I get down there.
Yep.
But that's another thing too. Like, I've competed around here in July in the dirt when everybody else is fishing ledges.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah. I mean,
to your point, you talk about, you know, winter shallow. I've done it. Some of the best events I've had in July and
100%.
August, I haven't fished in over 3 foot of water.
And it's been 100 degrees, dude. Like,
water's 92.
Yeah. And the sweat's pouring out my eyes, and I have to just take my glasses off because I can't even wear them. And they'll absolutely knock slack in your line. It's crazy. And those are the 2 different extremes, but those are things that I'll take across the country, because we said it earlier, a bass is a bass is a bass, man. Like, obviously you're looking at the situations and the conditions around you, but it's not going to be any different. You know, if the water's 92 and the oxygen levels on the bank, that's where those fish are going to be.
Yep.
So you go do that. Right. And I just so happens that I've really became good at that. You know, it'd be no different if I was like Corbersley, if I was good at reading my graphs and slinging a plug. That's what you do. Corbersley's not going to go to the bank in July. I'm not going 25 foot.
Yeah.
So we each have our own thing to do. And most of those guys out there in the NPFL are the same way.
Yeah. I think that's the beauty of the sport in general is, you know, unlike the NFL or football or any other sport, ball and stick sport, stick and ball sport, like, there's a playbook, and you got to go with the playbook. Right. And obviously, being the quarterback, you can call an audible and figure something out as you're reading the defense and stuff. But with fishing, you can do whatever you want to do. It may not work.
That's right.
But you can do whatever you want to do. Right. And so we talked about that earlier when we say going from a team sport to an individual sport. But now that you're with the league, are you traveling with people? Because we've talked to numerous anglers on the Elite Series, on the NPFL, while you're out there individually fishing, they talk about, how is it rooming together and like breaking down bodies of water together and things like that. Right. So it's like a team off the water and then an individual when you're on the water. Is that a method that you're going with this year on the NPFL?
Yep, 100%. So I travel with, a local, he's going to be a legend by the time he gets old, but Josh Hooks. Right? Yep. So I travel with Hooks, a guy that goes by the handle, the Champlain Kid, Cole Harris, and then a cool addition to our traveling group this year is Zach Burge. Okay. So us four are going to travel. Now, Burge wasn't at the first event because he had a BPT event, so he couldn't be there. But me, Cole, and Josh, we had, unfortunately, Cole had some mishaps there the first event, but we all three were on the fish to cash good checks, right? So and Josh and I were very fortunate to do so. Cole just had a bad second day. Things just didn't go his way, but he was on the same caliber of fish that we were on. But we had talked all practice, right? I had found kind of the bait that they were eating. Josh kind of took the bait and expanded it to a different part of the lake. And then Cole kind of said, okay, so we got the bait and we got this section of the lake. How about I go try something completely different? And it kind of worked one day and it didn't work for him the next, but he was still doing the same thing that Josh and I were doing, fishing boat docks with a chatterbait, right? It's just like I said.
Fishing boat docks?
Yeah.
Okay.
Really fishing boat docks does.
Making sure.
Yeah, we were actually casting to them, type of situation. But I digress. So that's the cool part about it, right? So I think Burge is going to bring a lot to the house this year. Burge is a well-established veteran out there. He's won at all the levels. And then Josh and I have held our own locally. Josh was a national champion, so Josh has been out there too, and he's been able to see a lot of the country as well. And then myself being from the Midwest, I've fished from the Midwest all the way to Florida. Now, I don't have as much experience out west as a couple of places that we're going to, and that's where we're going to hopefully rely on Burge. And then when we go up north, that's where me and Cole are going to kind of hopefully take over the house because I'm from Ohio and Cole's from Lake Champlain, so the smallmouth aspect there. But yeah, we're definitely going to work together. Hopefully we haven't really had a chance to talk to Burge too much. I'm really excited to meet him and get to see what he wants to do. And look, he might say, hey guys, I appreciate the offer, but I'm just going to stick to my own deal. And we're completely okay with that. Like we understand how guys want to go about this. It's just so happened that Josh, myself, and Cole are going to work this way because we trust one another. I've fished against Josh for years, so I know, when you're out there, you want to see each other do well because you want to stay out there.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? So we're all going to do that and do our best. Maybe somebody finds something that nobody else even thinks about and turns us all onto it, and we all do well, because that's something that before I got into this, Corbersley talked about. He's like, dude, when me, Trent, and Patrick got it, he's like, we 1, 2, and 3'd them. Like we were on it, and that's something cool. I'd like to see an event where we 1, 2, 3, and 4 it. Yeah. And honestly, would I love to win? But man, I'd just be just as stoked to see Burge, Hooks, or Cole win. Yeah, because those are the guys you travel with. I'll spend 8 weeks with them. That's a lot of time with people. Yeah, so you want to see your buddies do well too.
At what point in time when you're sharing information do you bite your tongue and not say anything to them? Because I know it happens, right? Like we all share information. We do it here regionally, right? Like we all share information, but you're not telling me everything about Falls Lake, and I'm not telling you everything about Sharon Harris, he's not telling you everything about Joe. Right? There's a point where the anglers in the house will lock up and not say something. I feel like.
I think so. Yeah. Then that's not being what's the word?
It's not being a liar.
Yeah, and it's not trying to be
still I think people need to remember you're still competing.
Correct. And that's not trying to be like, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for. It's deceitful. You're not trying to be that guy. It's just that, you're like, okay, we're working together. And it might be, we're catching them on boat docks with a chatterbait. But it might be
I'm catching them on certain.
There's a hot dock.
Yes. Yeah. There's the third docking in from the point, or it's the last dock in the pocket type of deal. And that's where inherently as an angler, I don't want to know that much. And the only reason why, because then all of a sudden you're going to get too locked in doing it.
Yeah.
And then after the first day, you're gonna be like, dude, you gave me some bad information.
You're going to try to catch another man's fish, right?
Yeah, I can't do it. Right. So if we can just say, hey, man, I'm getting bit on a bladed jig, and Josh is like, yeah, I'm catching them on boat docks. Then we kind of put the puzzle together. Right. So, and then the next day of practice, we're like, yep, that's the deal. It's boat docks with a bladed jig. And that's what we leave it at that.
Yep.
Right now, maybe after the first day of the event or the second day of the event, and we're either A, really way down in the standings, or B, maybe one of us has got a shot to win this thing. And let's say Josh is ahead of me, and I'm like, Josh is sitting in 5th going into the third day, and I'm in 30th. I'm like, look, dude, I'm just going to go on and tell you this. You might want to run just the second and third docks for a little bit just to see.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Because at that point in time, it's bigger than yourself.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's bigger than yourself, and your buddy's got a chance to win, which is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I want to help him do that. And I would hope they want to do the same thing for me.
Right. Yep.
But you're right. I mean, there's a point in time where you don't give too much information.
Yep.
And it's not like you said, like I said, I'm not trying to be deceitful. It's just that I know that with the way I throw a chatterbait may not be the same way they throw a chatterbait. And they may be looking at boat docks a completely different way than I look at them.
Yeah.
And that's where the cool thing about this is guys get together, and I look at a boat dock way differently than probably you guys look at it, right? You might look at a boat dock. I love them because they offer so many different things, right? You got one that's got 4 pillars on the outside, 3 on the end, 3 in the middle, 2 down the front. Like there's so many different ways to catch a fish off of it. I look at it as a place where not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 fish can live off. If you get the right one, you can catch a limit off of it. And then you run that boat dock and say, okay, what make this boat dock special?
Yeah.
And then you can kind of apply it. And it may be the same thing with Josh, right? Josh may say, well, man, that one post back there is a different color than the rest of them. And it's as simple as that.
Wow.
It might be an unpiece of treated wood that's not putting off a chemical. And that's where those fish are at. And people don't think about that kind of stuff. Like I have literally seen one post on a boat dock hold multiple fish, and it'd be the only boat post like that on those boat docks because it's untreated. It's been replaced, or it's the most rotten one. It's got algae on it. There are so many variables that you can look at and say, that's why. And then all of a sudden, you might only find 7 of them in the entire lake, but those 7 will probably have 40 fish on them.
That's interesting.
It's crazy to think about.
You just blew my mind, dude. I mean, I don't hashtag FBD very much, but you know, if I do, I'm going to start looking for that. Right?
The nuances in the shallow game are probably far more complicated than the nuances in the deep game. Because here's the difference: the deep game's one of 2 things: they either live there or they feed there. Right? That's what the deep game's all about. Those fish pull up on a point to feed, or they live on that point. Right? They might pull off on this channel turn, or they pull up there and feed in open water. Right? There's only so many things that they can have in a short area or an area that they're living in the summertime, versus a shallow water fish has so many options. He's got the front corner, the back corner, the middle, the stump to the left, the boat ramp to the right, and why he goes to each one of those places: wind, sun, bait, pressure, chemicals, algae. There's so many different things.
Yeah.
You know? And you just have to look at it that way.
Interesting.
When you're practicing, like for boat docks, they're a shallow game and you're a small area, do you really take your time to pick apart 1 or 2 docks, or do you maybe throughout the day you're targeting different areas of the docks?
Both, right?
Yeah.
So I'll pick, let's say there's 35 docks down a stretch of bank. I'll look at my map and say, okay, there's a channel swing in the middle of these, or there's a channel swing in the back, right? So I might fish the last 5 and the first 5. And if I don't get any bites on the first or the last, then I'll go to the middle. And let's say I get 1 bite or 2 bites in the middle docks, which is like, say, 15. Okay. So then I analyze on those 15 docks.
Why?
Exactly. What was there? Now I might go back through and I'm not even side scanning them or nothing. Now I might go back through once I fish that stretch of docks and say, okay, it was there because it had brush, or it was there because there was concrete underneath, or it was there because, oh, wait a minute, there's a school of bait in this area of the docks, right? It's all those little things that you have to look at. Now, granted, docks are different. Floating docks are different than pole docks, right? So pole docks, I think fish live on pole docks versus I think fish just kind of hang around floating docks.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of floating docks.
Most people aren't, but I can tell you I've seen some of the biggest fish come up from a floating dock. Some of the biggest fish I've ever seen, because most people don't fish them.
One of the craziest things was a tournament years ago. I think it was Elite Series. It was cold on Bull Shoals. and he was catching fish on a drop shot 60 foot under floating docks.
Yeah.
That just blew my mind.
It's because of the shade, right?
Yeah.
It's the only thing there. Like if you go to a Clearwater lake, like Hartwell's a prime example. Hartwell has a lot of floating docks because of the elevation change, right? It can get really low and really high. There's only thing there is that dock. Not Bull Shoals, but Lake of the Ozarks similar because it drops so much, right? Well, when you have nothing but super clear water, you can see 15 and 20 feet. The only thing those fish have is to get underneath of those boat docks to block because they don't have eyelids. They can't close their eyes.
Could you imagine if they did?
That's what I'm saying.
That would be really weird.
But I mean, that's so crazy about it. Like I would much rather fish boat docks than brush piles. Now, if you combine brush piles and boat docks, sure, whatever. But I'm just saying a boat dock has endless opportunities, right? You can fish, you can skip a bait up under there, whether it's a buzz bait or a jig. You can flip the outside. You can throw moving baits. You can skip a big glide bait up under there. There's so many ways to fish a boat dock versus there's only so many ways you can fish a brush pile.
That's true.
You know what I'm saying? And that's only my opinion. Now, you might have a guy who's a master brush pile fisherman say that's not true. You can fish it with a spinner bait. You can fish it with a swim bait. You can, but it still offers only the brush pile. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right. There's only so many different angles you can throw a brush pile to, versus a boat dock, man, you can throw it this way. You can throw it this way. You can throw it this way. You can throw this way. It's incredible. It's endless. And I mean, that's just a whole part of how
and we don't have a lot of them around here, right?
We don't.
Like we're talking Bugs Island, we're talking Gaston, we're talking Tillery, we're talking, but in the Triangle area, we don't have them, right? So when it comes to you and your strengths versus your weaknesses, you fish bugs a lot, so you got a lot of boat docks up there, so you can fish boat docks. But what are you not good at?
What am I not good at? Throwing a jerk bait. Yeah. I am self-admittedly awful at that.
Yeah, I hate it.
I love it.
I'm not good at finesse cranking. Like the funny thing is like everybody around here throws a shad wrap.
What is that's finesse cranking?
Yeah. Throwing a
shad
wrap.
Never heard it called that.
Yeah, it's finesse. Like you throw a crankbait on a spinner rod or throw it like on a 6.6 with 8-pound line. Nah, I don't even own 8-pound line. I'm bad at that. Like everybody's catching them on a shad wrap. I can't even throw a shad wrap.
If you, I got rid of my spinning rods. I went to the BFS.
Yeah.
That changed the game for the finesse.
That's the new deal. Right. So these guys are throwing these like 6.8 super whippy rods on 10-pound line and the bait caster with shallow spools that allow you to do that.
Yeah.
I'm just not into it. I'm not saying that, I would never try it, but it's just something I haven't got into yet. But yeah, jerk bait and finesse cranking. And look, I can throw a drop shot with the best of them.
I was just going to ask you, can you drop shot?
Absolutely. I drop shot bed fishing a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because here's the thing, man, nowadays, with our water quality, a lot of these fish, if you're going to sight fish for them, they get up super shallow and they're easy to see. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry wants to go down the bank saying, "Oh, there's one." Well, then they just get molested and pestered. Yeah. So a lot of times you can't go in there with a regular bed fishing bait like I normally would. I'd have to throw a drop shot to get those fish to bite. More specifically in a tournament situation, but yeah, a drop shot. I'll tell you something I'm really bad. I don't know if I would say I was bad at, but I don't have the patience for it. And that's a Carolina rig.
Yeah,
is that bad to say?
No,
I'm the same.
I hate a Carolina.
I committed to throwing it last summer, and I had it on the deck my first trip out, like summer pattern. I knew it was on. Like 4 casts, I caught one, never threw it again the rest of the summer.
So he caught one, but then I caught one. I jacked him back
to
back with a shaky head, and then he was like, "I'm going to shake."
I always want to drag a jig,
right?
Or what I used to do a lot, and when I fished a lot of club tournaments, like I took a lot of checks dragging a drop shot across like that in the same spots guys were doing Carolina rigs, because I don't know, it's just something, the ball and chain. And I've always got one tied up in the summertime, and I'll cast it around for a few minutes.
I got one thing is it's a bottom bait, right? So if they'll bite a Carolina rig, why won't they bite a jig?
Exactly.
Why won't they bite a shaky head?
I don't know.
I don't know. I hate it. I cannot stand to do it. It's just like aimless fishing, like mindless. Just I won't do it. Right.
There's a lot of money won on that thing.
I know. And look, I've got my teeth kicked in by it numerous times. There's no doubt. You cannot deny that. I love throwing a big worm.
Yeah.
I'll tell you something else over the last few years I've really come to like to do. Not specifically like offshore, but like in between depths. I love throwing a wobble head.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love throwing
It's a great offshore bait.
It is, but it's also a great shallow bait. Like when those fish have seen so many crankbaits, like by mid-May, early June, it's hard to throw like a DT6 or something. You can pick up a wobble bait and go through the same places and smoke them.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's just a fun bite too, because a lot of times you'll be reeling, all of a sudden you just don't feel anything. Like just caught it and it just slacks the line.
Yeah.
That's fun to me. And other than that, I mean, I feel like I can do pretty much
you like throwing big plugs, like deep cranking.
I do
20
when it's fun.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it to get 5 bites.
Yeah.
I'm not. I'd much rather go flip.
Yeah.
You know. But I do like there are some times when I'll get out there with a 6 or an 8 XD striking. And I love to throw a crankbait. But it's nowadays, man, I feel like it's such a short window.
It is.
Because everybody's got the same electronics and we're all looking out there. Like everybody wants to catch them first when they get off the bank.
Yeah, but what do you think now? Do you think with everyone trying to like drop a little minnow in front of their face, you think like it may take a little bit of that deep plug pressure off? Maybe not in the triangle area, right? Because we all know like guys love to throw deep plugs here and stuff like that. But you know, if guys are out there trying to live scope them, you know, it might relieve some of that pressure. I don't know.
Well, that's if those fish stay on the bottom.
That's right.
I mean, if those fish are being driven off the bottom to suspend because of the pingings and stuff, it's not going to matter.
Yeah.
Right. Like these are deals where it's the end of May, the first week of June, and it's just gotten hot and those fish are showing up and you're catching them with blood on their tail still. Like it doesn't matter. Those fish are out there to eat.
Yeah. Throw an Alabama rig at them.
Good luck.
I mean, hey, it works.
I detest that thing.
Really?
That's another story. Yeah, it's just not my deal. But hey, look, the guys that throw it, good for them. It's not my thing.
You like a frog?
Love a frog.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if I had 3 baits, it would be a buzz bait, a frog, and some type of flipping bait. It doesn't matter if it's a jig or a soft plastic. Like that's the 3 things that I need in my life.
I think I
love this guy.
Yeah.
And that's not like, I don't know, man. I just love to.
What about a flutter spoon?
That's fun, but I think it's situational, man. I think it's a very small, short window.
We call.
Are you from out there in Bull Shoals or something?
Yeah, that's where my family's from.
Okay, so like when JMFW, shout out to FBD, right?
Yeah,
the whole spoon jacking thing. Like I think that would be fun. Now we can't do that here because the water's just way shallower. But he's out there flipping a big spoon in some stalls and boat docks on like 60 foot and catching 4-pounders. That would be fun.
Yeah.
But I think it's situational here. Like some guys will catch them on a big floater spoon, just like they'll catch them on a hair jig. But I think it's just something that lasts such a very short
It is a
window.
short window.
Yeah.
It is a short
man,
window.
is it fun when it's
But it is fun.
Early June. Yeah.
Fish have to
It
be
is fun.
positioned appropriately.
Correct.
The bait has to be out there. The size of the bait
Correct.
matters.
And I promise, if you do it, you're gonna snag a big old catfish right in the butthole.
100%.
Oh, I did that on water.
It's never fails.
It is a butthole.
You throw
snapping bait.
you.
Are you throwing like the big nickel spoon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So, like,
promise you, it
you're
is
talking
a
about the
catfish
big
butthole.
magnums?
I haven't
Not
thrown the
that big.
big one yet,
Oh,
but I
okay.
want to.
I've done it. I've
But
done
like
it on
the
hairs. Yeah.
like
Have
the
you?
4 or 5 incher.
Yeah.
6.
So
But not that
makes
new
one
big
called
one that's
the
like-
sexy
That's what
spoon.
I
Yeah.
use.
Yeah, I throw the sexy
The
spoon
sexy.
a lot. And I throw that on falls. I don't throw it on Jordan that much. I throw it on bugs.
You'd lose that thing on Jordan.
Oh yeah,
in a
for
hurry.
sure. But yeah, I've never like got into the super huge Magnum spoons. But on the same line, like I love throwing a big swim bait,
Yeah,
like a 7-inch,
big glide.
like the old no, like the
I like
old
a big
school
glide.
Shadowlicious.
Yeah.
With
No,
the
we're not
three-
gonna talk about that.
Letting it sink all the way to the bottom.
Yeah.
Slow rolling it across.
And you
the
want to
bottom.
talk about the craziest bite?
Mm.
And the best day I've ever had in my life, and I got pictures of it on the phone. A buddy of mine lives over at Charlotte. This was back in the early days when I first kind of got my bearings on Harris, and I wasn't getting my teeth kicked in. It was in the summertime in June. I said, "Man, I'm on a crazy bite. You need to get over here." He's like, "All right, I'm coming." So he comes that same night, and we get over there, and he's like, "All right, what are we doing?" I said, "Just tie this on." And it was a 3/4 ounce Shadowlicious. And he said, "What am I going to do with this thing?" I said, "Just wait." I get to where I'm going. I pull up there, and this is way before like forward facing. I just look on my 2D, and I'm like, "All right, they're here." Yeah, just solid lines.
Yeah.
He's like, "All right, so what do I do?" I said, "Just let me get turned around." I said, "Fire that thing out there." I said, "Just count it down to 6." I think the water was like 13 foot. And he counts it down. All of a sudden he goes, "Dude, I'm hung on the bottom." I said, "There's no way. There's nothing down there." All of a sudden he goes, 7-pounder and caught it on the fall and just sat on it. Right.
Nice.
For the 30 minutes we whacked him. Our best fly went 37 with 2 over 8. It's the best day I've ever had in my life.
Pre 2016.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah.
It was unbelievable on the 3/4. I went through 4 packs of Shadowlicious that day. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
But those are the type, and now that's hard to do anymore nowadays, but that's the kind, like those big swim bait bites like that
Yeah.
are so fun.
Are you a glide bait guy?
I am. I am. Most people don't know that, but I have incorporated a glide into about 6 inches of water, and you would believe what you see with that thing.
I'm sorry, I ain't nothing like that old glide bait bite when they bite that big joker.
Oh, dude, but the things that you see.
Oh yeah,
they always say like a wacky worm will catch what's there, right? Like you say,
a glide bait will show you what's there.
100%. Like I use that as my number one search tool now. I probably shouldn't say that. I might actually have you edit that out. But I'll go to a lake when the water's 52 degrees and I'll pick up a glide bait and you'll see the biggest fish in the area. He might never bite it. He might never bite it 100 times you throw there.
Yeah.
But he'll show you that he lives there.
When he does bite it though.
Man, the biggest fish I've ever caught in a glide's like 6. Now it's not a giant by any means, especially here, but it was huge. And when he did, I watched him come. He came from a lay down, like 30 feet.
Oh yeah,
and it was in a team.
And they try to kill it.
It's unbelievable.
It's not like I'm coming to
like
eat you. It is like
to,
I'm coming to murder
and
you.
You don't even have
with
to
everything that I have in my life.
That's right. They set the hook themselves. You just hold on.
They just
then you just winch it.
It is the most angry eat you will ever see in your life.
But there again, that goes back to like I think so many guys are doing it now.
There's a lot more guys
seeing it so much, right? So when I first started doing it, it was about like 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. The same buddy that came to me with Harris actually makes his own out of a 3D printer. He actually makes two. He makes a hard glide and a soft glide. And he gave me one. He's like, dude, just take it and tell me what you think. And of course, it was just like not even like a bone white. It was like a milky white with 2 cheap hooks on it. And I started throwing it around. And the first time I threw it up on falls, like I threw it up under a willow tree. And I was like, well, let me just see what this thing does. Like if I let it kind of slow sink. I threw it up there and I was like, all right, cool. The rate of fall is nice. I like this. And I went in a 9-pounder come up and smoked it. And I mean, gone. It was a 7-inch bait. He folded in half. It was unbelievable. I called him that second. I said, dude, I want 4 of them. Said, why do you want 4? And I said, because the one I just caught on here broke the one you gave me. It broke it. I mean, because it was still
snapped it in
half.
Yeah,
the what do they call it? The joint was just so cheaply made. Like he didn't know. He was just trying to try it out. It was incredible. So then I started doing it more. So then like down around the spawn, I do it a lot, especially when the water's a little bit dirtier, because it'll show you the fish they're bedding. They'll follow it and go right back to where they're at. Then I can just mark them and go on down my way. But a big glide is unbelievable. Unbelievable.
You heard it, folks. Seth just gave the juice away, right? Seth.
A lot of guys are afraid to throw them
100%.
in areas that they're really effective.
Yep.
Like over the top of a laydown.
Or boat docks.
Because they don't want to lose a $50. And I understand, but when you see a 7.5 come out of a laydown and just try to eat a 9-inch shad like it has never. I don't understand why they eat it the way.
Because, dude,
I've never seen such an angry thing.
If you're hungry,
it's pure hate.
If you're hungry,
it's not even hunger. It's hate.
Do you want a Big Mac,
hate, dude,
or a double cheeseburger?
Yeah, but man, I think it's more along the lines of what Pete's saying. That's a whole different level. Of
it's not like I'm eating you because I'm eating you because I hate you and I do not want you anywhere.
It sounds even way more aggressive than like a swim bait, like a mag draft.
Oh, 1,000%.
Oh, the mag draft bite has nothing on it.
I thought those were aggressive when I first started that.
When they come up and eat a big glide bait, they hate it. Yeah. They do not like it. They don't want it anywhere near.
Wife's credit card.
Yes.
Like you hate it.
It's even worse than that.
Because you're paying for it.
Even worse.
So you got to just.
Yeah. So like, imagine this. Imagine the biggest, baddest, nastiest, awesomest blow up you've ever had on the top water, and magnify that under the surface.
Yeah. Oh man. It's honestly.
I'm not a glide bait guy.
You will be.
Never even caught one.
I'm gonna have to get into it. Yeah.
Just go. Like here's a prime example.
I got one. I got them.
Yeah, I'm a big cost-effective guy. Like I want the one I want to own so bad is Clutch Darter. Shout out Clutch Darter. If you're hearing this, send me one.
I can get you Kimball's number. You can hit it.
Send us 5.
So I want a Clutch Darter so bad, but man, I'm not in a position. I mean, I am, but I'm just not going to break down and spend $225 on a glide bait.
Yeah,
right?
me either.
Yeah. So Pete's got about 100 of those sitting around.
No, what you're talking about.
I hear you. I've got a Savage Shine Glide, which is great bait for the money. And then I've got a couple of the Spro KPD shads. And I got a couple that my buddy makes that are not going to be released forever.
I'll have one of those here soon.
Maybe. And then I got a couple of the what's that bait that
S-Waver?
Yes, the
S-Waver.
S-Waver. Pretty cost-effective bait. And I got one of the Storm Arashi glides.
Storm Arashi.
Yeah, I don't have like a bunch of the big 9-10 inch glides that some of those guys
The S-Waves are
Yeah, it's decent.
The
S waiver is probably, if you're just looking at getting started in a big glide bait, there's not a better one than
So that's the one you gave me.
No, you have a 6 cents Trace.
And that's a newer one.
That's a multi-jointed swim
Yeah, it's
bait.
a smaller. A glide bait's usually single joint.
I'm pretty sure it was the S waiver, but I could be wrong.
No, the S waiver is river to sea. I gave you a 6 cents bait.
You did give me, yeah.
River to sea S waiver is they make it in a 9. I think it's a 9-inch.
7 to
glide.
9.
Okay.
Skinny.
Yep.
But man, if anybody listens, if you want to start glide bait fishing, 100%, that is the one. Spend your money. Super easy to make glide.
What's a retail on that?
I think it's like 59
it's like
bucks.
59.
Oh yeah, that's
something like that.
Like even
just think of it. That is 5 pack or 10 packs of soft plastic.
dude, it's 3 jackhammers.
Yeah, 3 jackhammers.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's not a lot of money,
Yeah.
and you look at it like the Shine Glide is a little bit cheaper bait. I think you can.
It's a good one too.
Yeah, it's like 29 bucks, 7-inch bait, and everybody. And like back to what you were saying, everybody's afraid to throw them. Because they think they're under equipped, right? Just get you a flipping stick, man.
Yeah,
7.6 heavy action flipping stick, and you have to understand it when you tie these baits on. You can't throw it around like a square bill. It's more of a lob cast, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's like, "Oh, well, the big splash scares them away." I don't think so, because if you
Tracks,
saw what those followed those baits, you would think like it's
a big splash isn't going to scare them away when a buzz bait attracts them.
You'll believe that until one eats it.
Yeah. Like it's one of the coolest piece, right? It's probably one of the most coolest, breathtaking bites you'll ever see. And the worst part about it is the more you do it and the more you have that follow that bait and don't bite, it's the most heartbreaking.
Giants.
Like 6, 7, 8 pounders that will follow it right to the boat, and you can pull it out of the water and they sit by your trolling motor.
Yeah.
Because they don't know what to do.
Are you backing it up with like a wacky worm or something?
Good luck. Those fish have seen everything. That's the only thing.
I had one on Jordan. I had one on Jordan.
Can you scoop your net down there?
Last year, I think it was last year, late March. And I mean, I don't know, but 13. It was the biggest fish I've ever seen.
You saw a 13.
It was every bit of 4 foot. It was the biggest large one I've ever seen.
That was a mudfish.
No, yeah, mudfish. It was over 10. I can promise you, and I'm saying that with absolute confidence.
It's not surprising.
It was an absolute, and just like you said, heartbreak.
Yep.
You see that thing come up? I actually watched it come up on forward facing. I was fishing some.
Oh, look at him.
I was fishing some. I was only fishing in 5 foot of water, but I was fishing some stumps.
I was scoping.
So I saw it come up off the stump on it. And I was like, "Oh my god!"
Right.
So then you start trying to do everything, and then once it got to where I could see it, and it just followed it, and it did just like you said. It got to where I lifted the bait out of the water, and it just sat there from me to you away,
and they'll just
and it just sat there.
Because what happens is that's the only thing that, and I'm not like a glide bait aficionado at all. A buddy of mine really is good with them. He's actually fished with Oliver Nye. Oliver Nye is, and I'm not putting his words. I'm not saying that, but he's just told my buddy that, look, when they fixate themselves on something like that, that's the only thing they see. So that's why a big fish like that will come all the way up to your boat, because he only is focused on that. He won't see the boat and everything else around him, right? But it's an allure that it has to the fish that necessarily does not bring out the feeding instinct in them. But wait a minute, I've never seen that before.
Yeah.
What is moving like that? That doesn't move around here like I see all the time. And it just draws them. I mean, I've never seen more big fish on a glide bait. Well, there's one other bait, and I'm not going to mention that bait, but I've never seen more fish follow a glide bait than I have that. And it's incredible. It doesn't matter what glide bait it is. It's not like a brand specific. Anything 7 inches or bigger, I'm telling you, will attract the biggest fish in the lake.
Yep.
It's crazy to see. I mean, I've got some 5-inch glide baits. Ima makes one called a glide fluke. It's like 5. It's a great little herring imitator. It works almost like a Zoom super fluke. It's just super erratic and stays on top of the water. I've seen some big ones come after that, like 6, 7s. And then just imagine what an 8-inch glide bait that'll do that's 3 inches high. It looks like a crappie.
It's a reason why those, like we look at like white-tailed deer, right? Like everyone's chasing the biggest buck in the woods. Why do they go nocturnal? Why can you never get that giant buck? There's a reason, right? They're smart.
Right.
They've adapted. They've evolved to hunting pressure and scents in the woods and stands and cameras and all sorts of stuff. Big fish, I feel like, are no different. Right? Like they're big for a reason. They're smart, and it goes back to that class of fish you talked about. They're a different class. That's the Einsteins of the bass versus the Bobby Boucher's of the bass. So you're gonna get bit on the Bobby Boucher's. They just look at it and they're like, you know, and they bite. You know, those guys are like, no, 33.3%. I'm not biting that thing.
Well, I mean,
you know
it's
what
no different. Like I'm a huge sight fishing guy. Like I've made a lot of money around here doing that. And I'm a believer that the largest fish in a lake will spawn where you'll never see them.
Yeah.
I'm talking 10, 11, 12. I know I've caught some 10s off the bed. I've caught a bunch of 8s and 9s, but I'm talking the true double digit 10 plus pound fish that live in every one of our lakes. And I'm talking Jordan, Falls. I still believe there's probably some in Sharon Harris.
There are. I watched one.
Sharon Harris. And even bugs. I know that people say, oh, there's no 10 pounders in there. Yes.
Come on.
Okay. A place that big grows.
Gotta have.
Fish,
if there's 7 pounders in there, there's 10 pounders in there.
You'll never see those fish. And that goes back to those fish they are smarter than everybody else.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's right.
So,
man, I know I shotgun blasted you with a bunch of questions and stuff. I'm going to turn it over to these guys to ping you with questions because I do this every single episode. And then I got to find a couple final closing questions.
Pete just wants to know where to go on Falls and catch them.
Yeah.
Sorry.
What was those coordinates? Where's Corpsley's court? No, I'm just kidding. So your glides, are you throwing braid or fluorocarbon?
I throw fluorocarbon, 20 pound.
Yeah,
mainly. Yep. Okay. Throw it on I'll tell everybody, throw it on a 7.6. It's a loose Super Duty rod. It's a relatively new line that they come out with, but it's actually a multi-species line, muskie, some type of, like redfish, inshore fishing. It just holds up. It's a little bit tougher. It's actually rated for up to 4 ounces. Mm-hmm. Most of the glide baits that I throw aren't over 4.
Yeah.
And I really love the rod. It's got a cool wind grip on it, solid handle. It's not a split grip. I throw it on a 6 to 1 with 20 pound line. And the reason why people are like, why don't you throw it on a high speed? It's because I guess some people know this, but some people don't. The higher speed, the less power you have, right? So if I'm throwing a big bait and I'm catching big fish, I want all the power in the world to keep his head coming to me and turned away from whatever cover I'm throwing by. Mm-hmm. So I want a relatively lower speed, but with higher torque power. Mm-hmm. So I throw a 6.6 most of the time. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's a happy medium for me.
Yeah, I throw them on a big heavy duty reel, like the loose Super Duty 300 or
300. That's what I throw mine
300.
On. Mine's a Super Duty 300, 6.6 to 1.
Do you work it? Because I think we were talking about this maybe last week. Do you work it
with the reel,
or the rod?
Both. Yep. That's the cool thing about a glide bait, man. You can just slowly reel it and kind of let it do its thing, or you can work it and then let it. The cool thing about a glide bait is the more you fish them, each glide bait has its own little nuances, right? So 2 quick reel handle turns might go, and all of a sudden a rod tip might get it to turn 180 degrees.
Yep.
You'll learn those things the more you fish the bait, right? So it just, any given situation is different, but I use both the rod and the reel. Yep.
When you're not on fishing duty, right, and you're home with your platoon of children, you have 5 beautiful children and a wife.
Thank you.
Fire team.
What do you do outside of fishing,
man? So
because we see you at every tournament, and all the other tournaments, obviously you're hitting the contingency, you're making sponsor obligations, you're fishing to stay sharp for the NPFL, all those things. What do you do outside of that?
So I'm getting ready to turn 40 this year. So for me, getting back into shape.
Don't look a day over 39.
Thank you. Appreciate that. When I got done playing ball, man, I swore I was never going to get back in the gym again. I'm like, I'm done. I've done that for so long. And then I got older and I had kids and I realized I want to be around to see my kids grow up. So I got back into the gym. I work out 3 to 4 times a week. But then I spend we homeschool our children. And my wife does an incredible job with that. And then I have 2 small children. I have a 2.5-year-old daughter and a 3.5-month-old son. So we get a lot of help from my mother-in-law, but when my wife's handling the school duties with our older kids, I'm tasked kind of taking care of the younger ones. And then I have some animals around my house. I have some chickens, some goats. So we're out there either fixing pens or building pens or fixing fences or trying to wrangle goats that got out. We're just always outside. My father-in-law has a big farm, so we try to spend some time out there, but we just spend time together as a family. Like that's been my biggest thing of why most people are like, oh, you fish professionally. What a cool job. I do this because I want to spend time with my family. Mm-hmm. I don't have to go to work at 7 a.m. every day. I can if I want to, like I can go get a job. But right now it's working for us.
That's right.
Like I get to wake up, my kids get to see me every morning. Like I get up, I get 5, I go to the gym, I come home and my kids aren't even up yet. right? I wake my kids up at 8, they get up and they go feed the animals, eat their breakfast, get their schoolwork started, and then our day starts. We go outside and we might play for a little bit, or I might go work on tackle. Just, I'm at my house around my family. And that's been the biggest driving force for me to do this. Because like when I fished regionally and locally, which I still do, but when that's all I was doing, I had to have another job. So I was working 5 days a week till 5 o'clock. I'd come home, work tackle, and be gone Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I never saw my family.
Yeah.
So it just kind of was a no-brainer for us that this opportunity came about with Brad and the NPFL. And I said, well, the one good thing about it is that I'm going to be home a lot more. Yeah. So that's what I do, man. I'm home with my kids. I do some stuff locally with some sponsors that help me out. I kind of help them out in return, do some driving for them or whatever they may need. But that's pretty much what my daily life is like. I get up, go to the gym, spend some time with my kids outside. And then, if I get to go fishing, so Fridays are the community days for my kids' school. So they all go to a community day, and that's usually my fishing days. I get to go fishing on Fridays. I try not to, I do some guide trips too during the week. But that's been kind of less frequent here lately just because I've been gone so much, but I will do that sometimes. Yeah.
Are you an angler that doesn't mind fishing in a crowd, or do you like fishing in a crowd?
No, I want to get away from everybody.
We talked about that at the Lake Gaston tournament where you placed 5th in that one?
Tied for fourth.
Which
was,
we're not going to talk about that.
Correct.
He was tied for 4th. He's got a top 10 in that one. You got a top 10 in the first one at Bugs Island. So obviously consistent, but yeah, we talked about that I think at Bugs or wherever it was. Like, you don't like to be around anybody.
No. And
I'm the same way. I mean, if it's a summer deal offshore, I know it's inevitable for me. I'm not, but now talking to you and Jesse and some of the other folks, I may have to go fish 2 inches of water in the summertime. It's just not what I'm good at. Right. Like my strengths, I'm good in the pre-spawn. I'm decent in the post spawn. I'm not very good in the spawn, right? Like, I'm not a good bed fisherman. Sure. So that's where Pete comes into play. He's better at it than I am. So we're capitalizing on our strength. I actually just don't like it. It's just not fun for me. I think that's
sight fishing is not fun.
It's I just can't.
Can I ask why?
I just don't have the patience to work on a fish. I can do it.
Okay.
I did it. I did it yesterday. But it's just, I'm just like, okay, I know there's another fish to be caught and I don't want to work on this one. Right.
All right.
Now, tournament wise, I understand if you're on a 6+ pound class fish or whatever lake you fish on. I understand you may have to sit on that fish in order to stay competitive in the tournament. My patience is very slim with that. And I think that's probably my biggest weakness is like, if I'm not catching fish, then I think I'm doing something wrong.
That's not always the case, though.
It's not right. But I'm just like, I just know that if I don't catch them, I'm like, I'm missing a piece of the puzzle. You know what I mean?
Right.
So sometimes it goes back to those like mind games, that mental agility, like figuring out like the puzzle, like you talked about tonight, like there might be a reason why they're on one certain dock post and not the other. If I fish one dock and I don't get it, I'm going to go to the next dock, but I may not have paid attention to that one dock completely. Right. So we got a new segment of this show now. It's called Seth's Sit Rep, Seth's Situation Report. So now you just broke down that situation for boat docks.
Totally changed my approach.
Yeah.
Because I do not fish boat docks. I didn't grow up fishing them. It's not something I'm confident in, but that gives me a whole new approach. So
here's the thing about it, though. It's not just boat docks.
No, it's everything.
It's lay down.
No, I mean, I do it with lay downs and stuff. Like I love to fish out the same way, but for boat docks, that just, I don't know, it never carried over, but it makes perfect sense. It's the same thing.
Here's the thing. A boat dock is not something natural.
It's intimidating.
Correct. Well, and I get that, right? Some of them can be, and there are some that I won't even fish because they're too big, right? They offer you too much to fish and they can take too long. But a boat dock is something that is unnatural or not natural in the fish's habitat, right? So you introduce that for one. And then for two, it's the only thing that is in the water that offers something over their head.
Mm-hmm.
Like theoretically. Now, granted, you have lay downs that fish can get under, but what else is on or in a lake that a fish can physically move in and out from?
A dock.
Lily pads or matted hydrilla.
But you don't have that everywhere.
It's true.
You're right. You might have boat docks all over the country, but not everybody has grass.
That's true.
And that's what you have to look at, right? So yes, you do have emergent vegetation or submergent vegetation. But that's the one thing that we have in our area, right? We used to have some lakes with hydrilla, but we don't anymore. So that's what we have left. But I look at it as that's where I've kind of dove the most into is boat docks. But it's no different than with like a laydown or a bush. Yeah. Like you can take a bush that's 3 foot in diameter and you can say, okay, it's got 4 main limbs coming off of it. 4 of them, 2 go to the left, 2 go to the right. There's an opening in the middle. But on the back side, there's a dark spot. On the front side, there's a rock. On this side, 3 of the limbs are broken. On this side, there's 3 brand new flowers or 4 flowers, and you get a bite on the flower side. Why?
Yeah, I don't know why.
Well, there's a lot of reasons. The flower offers shade when the other side doesn't have shade. Yeah. The flower could have insects on it the fish are feeding on. That's why you got bit there. Yeah. Now, but then you have to run that pattern. Then you say, okay, well, let me find 5 or 6 more bushes with flowers on it. Mm-hmm. And if you get bites, well, there you go. Yeah. Then you can ignore all the other bushes and say, okay, well, they don't get. And this is something else. People don't realize is the longer a bush sits in the water, it will sour. People don't realize that. If a wood sits in water, it sours. The acidity comes out in it, right? Especially a live bush, right? Things that have green leaves are acidic. The longer it stays in the water, it will sour and push acid out. So you can fish rows and rows and rows of bushes and never, well, if they've been in the water for 6 months, what do you think happens? Mm-hmm. That acidity has driven this fish away.
Well, that's like when they cut laydowns in, you've got to wait until
they turn brown.
Yeah.
Yeah. The green leaves. Now, some guys will say they swear by a green leaf bush. I've caught fish off a green leaf bush.
They're lying.
No, I'm telling you. I promise you. Now, I'll tell you one thing that I will swear by, and you guys will call me a liar, but I will not fish a pine tree to save my life.
I won't fish if it still has needles.
I think a pine tree is the worst form of cover.
Once it loses all of its needles, there's no cones, and it's just a tree.
You'll fish it.
Husk, I'll fish it.
Yeah,
it's got all that. Still got pine needles. I don't
sap and all that tar and stuff, or like all that
acidity.
Yeah, I honestly can't say that I've really caught anything off a pine tree. In fact, I remember saying that to you. I was like, I'm not even going to fish a pine. Like,
if it still has bark on it, I don't fish it.
The bark is the worst part.
Once they've been in long enough where all the bark and it's just wood and they're smooth, I'll fish them. And I've caught fish off them, but I mean, you're talking 10 years. I don't know how long it takes for that to happen.
Do you pay attention to the type of wood on a boat dock? As in, is it treated cedar or oak or?
Sometimes I will if it's a lake that's full of different. But like here's a problem. So I'll tell this story. Josh and I were down there on Logan Martin. And I had figured out the last day of practice, like I could figure out which boat docks had a certain color of post. It was a color, but it was because of the type of the wood, right? Well, this same dock company had their emblem on the dock. And I said, Josh, we were on the phone together. I said, the docks you're getting bit off of is so-and-so's dock company. He said, yeah, dude, why? I said, are you lying to me? Like, be honest with you. Is it so-and-so dock company? He said, no, it's this. Why? I said, because I'm getting bit off the same docks. And it was that type of wood that dock used that those fish were on. I couldn't tell you what kind of wood it was. Like, it just looked like oak wood to me, but I don't know what it was. But it was the same docks. And then
I think it was rich mahogany.
It might have been.
Yeah,
could have been like sweet cherry.
That expensive.
I'm just telling you. I probably you can ask Josh Hooks. He will tell me because we were like, dude, we need to start looking for these docks.
That's insane, dude.
That's crazy.
Now that I think about it, like, we don't have docks around here, so don't do a lot of dock fishing. But there's some docks that use like the telephone poles.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever caught a fish on the telephone pole.
I've never caught one.
Because they're treated with something.
That's right. Treated lumber is bad. And if you look, most people who have docks, they rebuild them every 10 years.
And they'll use the cheapest lumber they can, right?
Usually. Because it's expensive. Yeah. Right. And then now here's another thing to take into point. Now they got that new stuff that's like a Pyrex, whatever that's
plastic.
Yeah, it's plastic that they're using. Well, the only good thing about that is that
holds heat.
It holds heat, but it's like super porous. So it tracks algae a whole lot sooner. Yeah. Yeah. And lights are another thing, but I'll digress on
my
that.
My mind's getting blown.
It's interesting. We've had a lot of podcasts. This is obviously episode 70. We've learned a lot from all the, folks we've had on the show, but I'll tell you this, like, you have really broken down how to like dissect anything, right? Whether or not it's a boat dock, it's a laydown, right? Because the laydown could be a new laydown. It could be a really old laydown. It could be one that's a pine tree, could be an oak tree, whatever the case may be. But that's the kind of stuff that's going through your mind. Like when you're looking at how am I going to develop the playbook for the tournament? Right. Which you share a little bit with your friends, which I think is a key factor. We talked to John Cruz about that. Like you share enough, but you don't share the entire playbook with your partners. So, man, you got my brain spinning because like right now I'm thinking to myself, like so let's talk. I know we've been going for a long time, so I'll end it with this history.
Yeah.
Right. We talk about fishing history. Does history help? Does it hurt, or is it somewhere in between?
I'd say it's somewhere in between.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. Funny story, and I know you're trying to wrap up, but my father-in-law's been fishing around here a long time. And I'm kind of like one of these guys that I like to run new water, but I like to find things that are current, right? Yes, some fish use things they used to use 20 years ago. But my father-in-law used to say, we'd be in a tournament, like, hey, man, you want to run over there? I caught one there. I'm like, when? Well, it was a while ago. I'm like, how long ago?
16 years ago.
Yeah. Those fish died in 1987. All right. I haven't used that stump since then. Let's look for something else.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there has been times where my father-in-law has bailed us out, like when we were fishing team tournaments, right? And he'd be like, hey, man, there's some rock over there. Let's go fish that. And we'd catch one. Mm-hmm. So I think it's somewhere in between, right? I think a guy who can go back to our conversation earlier, adapt and change and realize, okay, I've caught him on this stuff, but something's happened. Let's just go check this real quick. Yeah. Something I've caught him in the past. It's similar, but not the same. It sets up similar, but it's not the exact same time of year. Those things kind of work out, right? But I think it's somewhere in the same. I know a lot of guys. I got some buddies that fish mainly Car Lake, and they fish the same stuff all the time.
Same bro spots.
Yep. And they catch them.
Yeah.
So I guess history's good.
Yeah.
But I guess to each his own.
It's all,
you know what I mean?
History is good. It does work. I'm not going to say who. I'm not going to say where.
Please do.
It's in the north. I'll say that much. But I've got a buddy who has caught the state record smallmouth 4 years in a row off the exact same rock pile in a lake up there. He's never taken it in to have it certified. He catches it, puts it right back. But
is it the same fish?
It's the exact same fish. It's got very distinct marks. He's got pictures of it every year, and it's gotten bigger every year.
But
it's going back to the same. That's its home. That's where it lives. Wherever it does it spawn, thing it does. When it's done spawning, it goes out and it spends its summer on this particular area. And he's caught it 4 years in a row in the exact same spot. So it's history can be good.
We give fish too much credit. We don't give them enough credit at the same time.
Yeah.
The last thing I got for you, Seth, we appreciate you coming down here. The last thing I have is you got 5 events left for the NPFL season.
Sure.
And you said you're not going to fish the rest of Fishermen so we can get AOI. So that's great.
I didn't.
No, I'm just messing.
You're going to win the AOI, but it's not because,
No, we're just messing. So you got 5 events left. What are you most looking forward to out of those 5 events, out of those 5 lakes? Where do you think your strengths are going to be? And then where do you think you're really going to, have to put in a little bit more?
Still in my question there, Trey.
Sorry.
5 events left. What am I looking forward to the most?
Which lake?
Is it cliche if I say all 5?
Yeah, you got to pick one. There's got to be an event you're looking at and you're like, that's going to set up for what I like to do. Like, I'm very excited.
But here's the thing, like,
I know what you like to do.
Yeah,
works anywhere.
Yeah,
at any time. But there's got to be one. We all have one lake where we're like, yeah, I can't believe we're going here. Then
I don't have that this year.
You're not super excited for Hartwell coming up because of what we know was probably going to be going on.
I am super excited for Hartwell, but the deal with that is that place. There's going to be so many ways to catch them. Right. Like usually when you say that, you say, okay, I can't believe they're going there because this is the way I like to fish. And that's how it's going to be won. Yeah. It's not going to be that way at Hartwell. I don't know, man. I think Lake of the Ozarks. And the only reason why I say that is A, I've never been there.
Lots of boat docks.
Exactly. And B, it's the time of year where you can catch them power fishing on a jig, on a buzzbait, on a whopper plopper. Like it's that time of the year. I'm looking forward to that event, but I'm also looking forward to Florida, right? Florida in September, people are like, yeah, but man, it's Florida. There's 10 pounders everywhere. they can't go but 4 feet down because that's all the deep the water is.
I think we're going to try to come down to St. John's.
You can win on 12 pounds a day in Florida if it happened to be like that.
Yeah, and
you know what I mean.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to the Pickwick event, and that's just me being honest.
Every NPFL angler says
everybody we've talked to,
and that's not because of that. I know that's going to be a grimy deal, man. That's early July, right after the 4th, super hot. Like it's going to be a job just to keep your fish alive. Yeah. And that's just being honest because it's going to be hot. Those fish are going to be, they're going to be postponed probably for at least a month or so, but still it's the time of year. And it's just going to be, that's going to be a spot lake. I have a feel like it's going to be boat draw, current, and spots. Yeah. You're going to pull up on a place that's the current's rolling. After the current stops, deuces. So I'm not really looking forward to that one. I'm looking forward to Saginaw Bay because that could be one smallmouth fishing or largemouth fishing, depending on how the weather is. Yeah. But I'd say that the two that I'm looking forward to the most are Ozarks and Florida.
Okay. Yep. That's fair.
Yep.
I don't have anything else.
I told you that was my last question.
You got anything else, man?
No, I'm good. Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna give you a chance to plug your socials, your sponsors. But before we do that, real quick, I just want to shout out one more organization. They got an event coming up. Take a Warrior Fishing has their Warrior Fishing event coming up on May 18th. They need warriors, surprisingly. They've got boats. They've got enough boats who have committed to fish, but they're looking for 3 warriors. So if you're listening to this, if you're a vet, active duty, or know somebody that's in the Raleigh area, can get here for a free bass fishing tournament. They're going to random draw, stick you with a boater. Could be me. Could be some other folks we know. Are you boating or fishing?
No, I'm a warrior.
Okay, so Trey's fishing. So it could be me. I don't know. David Fuchs, who listens to the show, is coming down from New Jersey to take somebody super awesome. But if you're a warrior, active or reserve, and you're interested in that, they're going to pair you up with a boater. It's no cost. Go out. It's just a fun tournament. There's no entry fees. 5 fish, weigh them in. I don't. They might have some prizes or not, but that's not what it's about. It's about getting you out and letting you experience the outdoors. So if you're a warrior, again, retired, active, whatever, you can sign up at Take a Warrior Fishing. Take a Warrior Fishing.
Warrior Fishing Inc. Isn't it?
Yeah, I got to look at what the website is, and I'm now on their board. So you think I would know that?
And it'll be linked down below.
Yeah, and I will link it below.
I wanted to say congratulations to you and Chelsea for being on the board now.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that.
Yeah, you didn't even tell anybody about it.
I know.
It's warriorfishing.org.
I just saw the post.
It was. We had to wait. Like they voted on it. It happened and all went super fast to their announcement. So I'm actually the director of boaters and volunteers. So. If you're looking to volunteer, if you don't have a boat and can't fish, and you want to come out, hit me up, and we can find something for you to do. But
when is that event?
May 18th.
Oh, okay.
You should totally. You can't do it. You can't.
You won't be.
I'll be hopefully heading home with the shield.
Yeah, and if you are, we will have you back on. But we're gonna have you back on anyway because this has been a blast.
Dang! If
you don't win, just don't even bother.
If you don't win, you give all your waypoints to us.
No, but obviously you can't do this without the support of your family. We've talked at length about that, but you also can't do it without companies that support you and give you the opportunity. So I want to go ahead and give you a chance to shout them out, let people know who you use and who lets you do this.
Sure. So first and foremost, I have two people. One is a guy by the name of Jeff Coffey. Owns a company called Infinity Communications up there in Durham. I think he's well over 30 different locations now in the States, but he's the number one communications company in the world, or in the United States, should I say. Disasters, fires, you name it, things go down. That man is on there and he gets people back to help communicate. So him first and foremost, and then there's another outfit up there by the name of Maverick Mulch. Good friends of mine, Tate Fogelman and Jay Fogelman. Those guys have really stepped up this year and helped me get to do this. Now, and that, of course, there's so many other people, right? So my family, they've all helped out. My beautiful wife for sure. But then company like Nitro, Mercury, those guys I've been with Nitro now for 5 years. Been with Mercury now since then as well. Lou's, Strike King, and then there's some great local companies up by me. Finish Line Pest Control, Goodwood Farms. Those are people who have stepped up and said, we believe in you. We're going to help you out the best that we can, and we hope it's worth it. And they've been top notch, And then this year, Carolina Waters has stepped up, and they took a chance on me too. So I'm very thankful for them, and I hope it to grow. I've always been kind of iffy about the whole sponsorship thing because, like, I don't want to be a patch pirate.
Yeah.
I want to be able to work for the companies that believe in me. So I've always kept my sponsor portfolio small, only because I was fishing regionally. Like I didn't feel like there was that much benefit. But now that it's national and I can grow my portfolio, I still want to keep it small because I want to be able to give my best to those companies that have invested in me. And those companies have done so. So I'm very thankful for all of them. And I hope to bring home a shield for those people along with my family, because they've given up the ultimate sacrifice. You know, my wife, God bless her, she has seen me at my worst and seen me at my best. And she deserves the shield more than anybody, I think, because that it's going to be a validation that all that sacrifice has led to this point. Right. But at the same time, we're Christians. We believe in God. And if it's his will, it's his will. If not, we're okay with that. We're thankful for the things that we have. Just like I'm thankful to be here with you guys. I met you guys several weeks ago, and to be, you know, I think I can call you my buddies now.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. We've had a lot of great conversations, and I appreciate the opportunity to be on here and tell my story a little bit and showcase some of the people that have believed in me. So I want to thank you guys for that.
No, absolutely. And where can folks follow along with you? Obviously, social media is a big thing now. So
yeah, and I'm awful at it. But here's the thing, right? So I'm getting better at it only because I have to, right? It's just a part of the sport. It's a part of the business. So my wife's really pushing me with that. Now she handles everything, but I kind of direct her what to say, what to post. But I have fat fingers, so I'm not really good with these stupid smartphones. But Seth Ellis Fishing on Facebook and Instagram. And if you don't mind, I got a cool little contest running right now. And
absolutely.
This may or may not air before the contest is over, but I'm working with Maverick Mulch up in Durham. And what we've got going on right now is if you come in and buy 5 yards of mulch, and I don't know what the price is, but what had happened is you're going to get your name entered into a drawing to win a guide trip with me. All expenses paid, right? So we'll pick the lake of your choice, Jordan Falls, Gaston, or Kerr. We'll spend a whole day out there. But you need to buy the mulch first, right? Go up there, see those guys, tell Tate that you heard about this, and get your entry into the contest. There's an unlimited amount of entries. It doesn't matter. So every time you buy 5 yards of mulch, you get your name entered. So if you buy 30 yards, 6 times, right? The more the merrier. And then if this goes over well, we're going to do another one in May. Awesome. So stay tuned for that. You know, hopefully this will go well, but I know there's been some positive feedback, you know, and these guys probably have the best price per yard of mulch I know of, and they'll deliver. So check them out. Maverick Mulch. It's in North Durham. You know, if you guys have any questions, you guys can just message me on social media, and I'll get with you guys.
Where's your social media at?
You already said it. Seth Ellis Fishing on Facebook and Instagram.
Fishing.
Trey wasn't paying attention.
Yep.
Well, I was thinking about calling Tate and buying like 14 yards of mulch.
Hey, and they'll believe it to you. They'll deliver it to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. They'll bring it to you.
Well,
I need to win. I need to win so I can have one day on every lake. So I got to
win. Well, here's the thing: if you guys get in now and win April, and then get in May,
that's true.
Oh, look at that.
True. That's 2 lakes.
Little pre-fishing.
Yeah, for sure.
Ben, what you got, brother?
Oh, I'm good. Appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely.
I definitely enjoyed this. Blew my mind a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to apply this when I get on the water, but definitely appreciate you coming in and hanging out and just talking fishing.
No, thank you guys. It's been a blast. I hope to win a shield so I can get back on.
We're going to have you back on even if you don't. I was being mean earlier. That was
being mean.
Thank you.
But no, man, really appreciate you, Trey. If you don't have anything else, I'm going to sign us off. So everybody, appreciate y'all listening. Appreciate Seth. Dropped a lot of knowledge. I know it's a lot. You might want to go back and listen again, just on breaking stuff down. I know we sort of look at boat docks, but I use the same approach on lay down and stuff like that. And I know I just never carried it over to boat dock. So I'm appreciative of learning that. And Seth has shown, you know, he truly believes in the mission that we have going on here as well, which is helping us to cultivate cultivate a culture of anglers, helping anglers one cast at a time.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Oh God, it's a toad, son. It's a toad, dude.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day.